Leaf curl is a fungus that affects stone fruits such as peaches and nectarines. It's a result of a mineral deficiency. So when you take Oceans 92 and you foliar feed it into the leaves of the tree can uptake trace minerals, many of which it's never seen before, and become fully mineralized and therefore fight off the fungus. And actually what will happen is the leaves that are affected will just shrivel up, die, fall off, and the tree will put out a new leaf in its place. Oceans 92, pick up some today.
This is a pretty sick tree, very sick tree, plum tree. And I don't know whether we can do any good for it or not, but we can try. The worst we could do is kill it. It's going to die anyway. And the best is that maybe we could get a few more years of good produce out of it. Okay. What I did is take 2.5 gallons of water, and in this mix I have 2 ounces of the ocean water salts. Okay, 2 ounces of the ocean water salts. We put it in there, and it's taken maybe 5-7 minutes until it was totally dissolved. And you just mix it up, make sure that there are no particles left on the bottom there. So it's pretty dissolved. If I tasted it, you can barely taste the salt with that mixture there. Okay, so we want to just pour this over all of the curly leaf leaves and let it drop to the ground around. And because I'm not 10 feet tall, we're just going to throw water on it.
Oh, nice.
Uh-oh. Okay. Go ahead and we will just dump the rest on this tree. Okay. Now, that should be done again next week, a week apart. And then these curly leaf, the bad leaves, will probably turn black and fall off the tree.
It'll look like this?
Yes. And the new leaves coming out should not have curly leaf on them. And those plums will taste better because of the minerals that the ocean water has in it. So when they ripen, they will taste better. Okay, if this were my tree in my backyard, I would then use some of the tree planting kit material all around it here. This is a hungry tree, okay? A well-fed tree will not get that sick. So we'd use some of that tree planting kit material around here and then put an alfalfa hay mulch on top of that.
Okay.
And water that in good.
However, when it's time to prune, what do you suggest as far as cutting this back?
Yeah, we can top it not very far, and as you drive through the valley and you see the plum orchards there, there are a lot of different ways to prune that are okay. What we're looking for is to get light and air into the middle of that tree. And any of these, well, this is a broken branch, so of course it comes out. But we want also to open this tree up, and sometimes the ranchers will they'll tie these branches out so that they go out instead of up.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. It's got fungus in here too.
Yeah, it's a pretty sick tree, and it's likely to have a big windstorm and just snap off one of these days.
Okay.
But you know, it's
worth a try.
It's worth a try. Get another year or two out of it, and the plums are good. Why not? Okay. You ready to go plant this tree?
Let's start with a word of prayer. Dear gracious Heavenly Father, Lord, we ask for you to be here with us as we look at this very timely, important subject of gardening here in these last days, Lord. May we understand a little deeper the love that you have for each one of us as we learn more and more how to grow the food that you designed for us to eat in the way that you designed for us to eat it. So Lord, thank you so much for giving us the knowledge that we have in these last days to grow nutrient-dense food in a time when all our food is depleted. So thank you, Lord, and be with us. In Jesus' name, amen. So I've titled this talk here, Going Beyond Organic, because organic really is not telling us anything about the nutrient value of that food, is it? When something's labeled organic, is it telling you this is as nutrient dense as this apple can be? Does it? It just simply says, I didn't use any poison to grow this food. And of course, there's other things that come along with that, using as natural means as possible. And there's a style of gardening that goes along with organic, but it's not. There's no indication of where the nutrient value lies in that food. So that's something to keep in mind as we go through this whole thing here. Just a quick overview of what we'll look at. We're going to look at a spiritual application to start with. When we come to the garden, what a beautiful analogy God's given us to how we're to share the gospel. Amen? And really, when you look at it, God placed Adam and Eve in a garden, right? Mm-hmm. And if you look at the Bible, how was the world created? He spoke and it came into existence, right? But when you look there in Genesis chapter 2, you see that it says, and God planted a garden eastward in Eden. So God didn't speak the Garden of Eden into existence. He actually got down on his hands and knees and he planted the garden. That's kind of an interesting concept to think about, isn't it? Yeah. And then he put Adam and Eve in the garden to learn about his character, right? That's what we're learning about. And to continue that on and on and on, we're just to give you a little background of who I am. I work with my brother and a friend in a ministry called Little Light Ministries. How many of you have heard of Little Light Ministries? All right, a few of you. And typically we go around and we talk about Hollywood. So this is a nice, refreshing experience for me, being able to talk about gardening. And actually, I've put into the first talk of all my Battlefield Hollywood presentations a talk on gardening because of these spiritual applications. So really, and then we're going to look at issues with modern agriculture and what havoc that's wreaked on the health of the population, and then obviously the solution: how do we grow nutrient-dense food? So I asked the question, why are you here? And I always ask this question when I give the Battlefield Hollywood presentations. Why are you here? Why have you come here to this meeting? Obviously, yeah, you saw a flyer and hey, we're going to learn some gardening. We want to be better farmers. We want to be better gardeners, right? Well, and in that, like I said, there's this beautiful spiritual application that this analogy that we can look at in terms of gardening and how we spread the gospel, because we're all to have our hands on the gospel plow, right? Isn't that the song we sing? Got my hands on the gospel plow? So then the next question logically is, what are you plowing? Spiritually speaking, what are you plowing when you have your hands on the gospel plow? What? Souls of men? The heart, right? Isn't that what the soil is representing, is the heart? All right, so the soil of the heart. And really, that is the heart of the matter, right? The issue is an issue of the heart. It's a heart matter. And that's really what God is trying to affect. He's trying to affect our hearts, is he not? And so he's asked us to co-labor in that effort as we put our hands on the gospel plow. And Jeremiah 4:3, it says, break up the fallow ground and sow not amongst the thorns. So what we're going to see here is that there is a science to the gospel. It's not just a haphazard thing that we do when we share the gospel with somebody. And when you look at Christ's Object Lessons, which is a beautiful book about all the object lessons that Christ drew from nature, right? The great lesson book of nature. Here she says that the sowers of the seed, that's each of you, right? Because each of you have a field of influence, and you're influencing the people in your field, the hearts, the souls in your field, right? So the sowers of the seed have much work to do in preparing hearts to receive the gospel. In the ministry of the word, there is too much sermonizing and too little real heart-to-heart work. We're real good about talking about the gospel, aren't we? We're real good about talking about all these things, but when it comes down to it, how we live that out to our neighbor, to the person in our field, is a very important matter. There is need of personal labor for the souls of the lost. In Christ-like sympathy, we should come close to men individually and seek to awaken their interest in the great things of eternal life. Their hearts may be as hard as the beaten highway, and apparently it may be a useless effort to present the Savior to them. But while logic may fail to move, an argument be powerless to convince. Right? How many of you felt like you've been in an argument before over these matters, right? Argument be powerless to convince. The love of Christ revealed in personal ministry may soften the stony heart so that the seeds of truth can take root. Amen? The plow. The gospel is the central theme in the Bible, and it's the restoration of God's image in the souls of men. That's from Education, page 125, and it's very prophetic that we are here in a school talking about these things, right? And here, Brian, you're going to see what a great little thing. They've nearly got the Madison model going out here. They didn't quite tear up the tennis court, but right next to it, they've got a nice garden. We're going to put in some trees, and we're going to do some demonstrating of these things here this afternoon, and it's beautiful that's happening here at a school. And our schools are desperate need of stuff like this. They really are. The focus has gotten off track, and we're off playing basketball and all this other stuff, and not thinking about eternal things and how can we be sharing the gospel. This is an interesting quote, and really I started my venture into gardening and everything after hearing a sermon by a guy named Rico Hill, who started the Beehive Ministry, and he gave this sermon, and at the end, man, the whole congregation walked to the front at his appeal. And he read this quote: "We have come to a time when every member of the church should take hold of the medical missionary work." Now, she said that in her day. And I was like, I never heard that. I grew up Adventist. I never heard that. That we should all take hold of the medical missionary work. Simple remedies, understanding the health message, right? And the health message really starts in the soil. That's where we're going to start. But, there's simple things you can do. Like, does anyone here have a little sore throat or a little tickle or not feeling good? Yeah? Yeah? Here. So, this is my own mixture. I got this recipe from Dr. Schultz. How many of you have heard of Dr. Schultz? All right, the Herbal Botanical, and I bought a bunch of these catalogs for you guys if you want to take these. These are free. This is his Herbal Botanical, all plant-based cleanses and natural remedies and things. And I first came across Super Tonic looking at his stuff. And I looked at the ingredients, and I was buying a little 2-ounce bottle for $24. And I said, man, I'm going to take my $24 and go buy these ingredients. It's just garlic, ginger, horseradish, habanero pepper, and white onion. Put those through my juicer, put them in some Bragg raw apple cider vinegar, and next thing you know, I'm putting it in little bottles, and all my friends and family are dealing it. And then last year, I did a little Kickstarter campaign and raised some funds to put together 1,000 bottles and create a website and all that. And that's been a great little home remedy that I've been able to go around, and any people I meet, oh, you're not feeling good? Here, try this. And everybody that tries it says it works for them. And there's simple things like that we can do, right? So we're all called to be medical missionaries. Now, look at this next quote. "But more important still is the art of preparing food so that it is both healthful and appetizing. This art should be regarded as the most valuable of all arts because it is so closely connected with life. it should receive more attention. For in order to make good blood, the system requires good food, the foundation of which that which keeps people in health is the medical missionary work of good cooking. So if you're the cook at your house, you're a medical missionary. Right? Great quote there. Food should be our medicine, medicine our food, right? Isn't that the famous quote? So we need to start in the soil, and the thing that I've learned the most, the thing that I've taken from my time with Lynn Hogue, who I'll talk about here in a little bit, learning the Ellen White method, bolstering the soil food web. Getting the soil food web thriving and alive is one of the key aspects, and then also balancing the mineral content that's there is the next aspect. So, how many of you heard of the soil food web? Okay, a few, right? So most people, when I talk to them about these things, they haven't heard of the soil food web before, and they hadn't really thought about or realized that the soil really needs to be a teeming, symbiotic, living system. And there's all these little creatures that live there in the soil. There's beneficial bacteria, beneficial protozoa and algae and mycorrhiza fungus and all these different little critters that break down the organic matter in your soil to create plant food. So our plants don't eat compost. They eat what the worms and the little bacteria and the fungus, as they break down the compost, that's their food, is what is left behind from the microorganisms in the soil. So, one of the things we want to do is we want to test the soil, right? So Brian has done a test here and found out the things where he's deficient, and then you can get a recommendation and you can start to balance things in your soil. The thing is, when you go to start balancing your soil, it's like everything is attached. The second you start adding one thing, it ties up the ability for another nutrient to be taken up. Or vice versa. If you're deficient in something, even though you may have adequate levels of something else, it's not available because it's not in balance with everything else. Everything's connected, is what I'm trying to get at there. So mycorrhiza, this is just one little aspect of the microorganisms that live in the soil. This is a really fascinating one to me. The spidery hair-like tentacles there are the tentacles of the mycorrhiza fungus that cannot live by itself. It has to have the root structure of the plant to survive, and there's a symbiotic relationship that happens. The actual tentacles of the fungus will grow actually right into the cell structure of the root. And this affords the root hair will end here, and the mycorrhiza fungus can, like a hair-like extension, come out to here and bring moisture, water, and nutrients into the plant that the roots couldn't even reach. And some of those nutrients only make it into the plant through that pathway. So even if the mineral was there in the soil, it wouldn't make it into the plant unless the mycorrhiza was there. And then the mycorrhiza feeds off a little sugar off the root. That's how it survives. And then the most interesting aspect is that because it's tied in right into the very cell of the root, it will connect the root structures of like species. So your lettuce row, if you have mycorrhiza present, will all of a sudden be connected at the root base. And a beetle will come along, he'll start nibbling on this one lettuce plant, and that plant's going to react by creating enzymes and things to ward off that predator. That message is then communicated to the whole row, and they've never even seen the beetle, and they all start creating the enzyme. Isn't that amazing?
Yeah, that is amazing.
Praise God.
Praise God. Now think back, spiritually thinking, think about that, right? That's kind of like the Holy Spirit. That thing that connects us at the root that we don't see. The whole soil food web is really an analogy of faith, right? We can't see what's going on underneath the surface. But we believe that it is, and when it is happening, things grow much better and they're much more nutrient dense. Maybe you've never thought of the Holy Spirit like a fungus, right? But what an amazing analogy that we have there in the soil. Here's a couple pictures of when you use it and when you don't. So you can see you get much more vigorous root growth, you get much more growth out of the plant, and of course a higher yield. I met an old tomato farmer at the farmer's market. I've been going to the farmer's market and talking with people there. This guy came up on a wheelchair. He'd been growing tomatoes forever. And he said, man, since I started using mycorrhiza, he's like, I cannot believe the difference. I'll never go back. And so people in big agriculture are starting to realize these things, that really chemical farming has got us into a situation that's a dead-end street, really. And that we've got to get back to the way it was designed, right? I mean, this is the way God designed it, naturally. Now, this has all given us a lesson in how we share the gospel. And so when we think about these things, I think about my own experience. And my wife's parents are Jehovah's Witnesses. And so one time they came to me and they said, hey, let's have a Bible study. I said, all right, let's have a Bible study. I just started coming back into the church. I'd been gone for 10 years. I was all excited about these things. And so she said, well, what do you want to study about? And so I said, okay, well, I'll bring a topic. Let's do the Sabbath, right? So I had this 2-page paper, all these texts. I mean, there's no way they're not going to believe in the Sabbath after this Bible study. So I sat down, laid it out. Did it work? No. It was as if I went over to my tree and I just snapped off a branch and I just walloped him over the head with it. And a sword fight ensued, right? We weren't sharpening the sword against iron. We were actually fighting over this topic. And I realized, wow, you know what? There is a science to the gospel. There's a science to witnessing to a witness. There is. And you don't start with Jesus. You don't start with the Sabbath. You don't start with these key pillars that they feel they have their head around. You start with prophecy. That's actually the way to start. And if you really want to look at some more details about that, go to audioverse.org. That's a free sermon download. All sermon downloads, free Adventist website. And Ivor Myers has a talk on there called How to Witness to a Witness. And it's powerful. It gives you a lot of insight there. So what I realized was, man, was that the seed I should have started with? Right? Was that the truth I should have started with? Was that the season to plant that seed? Right? And that, as I looked back on it, I realized, wow, I made a mistake there in not preparing the soil, and then not knowing what season it was and what seed to bring first. So there's a whole different approach that I'm mentally thinking about and preparing for. How do I witness to my mother-in-law? Because she's been a Jehovah's Witness for 36 years. I mean, she's deep in it. Destroyed 5 Bibles going through them. You know what I mean? So they know their Bible. And every seeds are amazing, are they not? They really are amazing. A little package can sit there dormant forever, and then put it in the ground, a little spark of life happens, and off it goes. It's amazing. Christ is our example. He that soweth the good seed is the Son of Man. So we're to follow after his example, and no matter what our age is, no matter what our occupation is, we're all called to sow seed. Right? So then the question becomes, what are you growing? Spiritually speaking, what are you growing? What is represented by the plants that grow from the truths that come from the Bible, planted in the heart, grow, and do something in the life, do they not? Right? What do you think is growing? Well, we'll go back to Christ's object lessons. Page 38, she says that every seed brings forth fruit after its kind. Sow the seed under the right conditions. Right? You've prepared the soil. You know what season it is. And it will develop its own life in the plant. Receive into the soul by faith the incorruptible seed of the word, and it will bring forth a what? A character and a life after the similitude of the character and life of God. Amen. So that really, when you look at it, there's the theme. What was the purpose of the gospel? To restore the image of God in the souls of men. There it is, right there. Full circle, right? So we could see how, wow, the health message is the right arm of the gospel. Right? I mean, it literally is the right arm of the gospel. Because this is the situation that's taking place. Because God placed Adam and Eve in a garden. He put them in a garden for that purpose. He put us in that environment for a purpose. And of course, Satan wants us to take out of that environment, right? He wants to put us into a city where we forget about nature. And of course, we all want to bear fruit, right? The Bible says, you shall know them by their fruits. So we all want to bear fruit, right? And what is represented by the fruit? What is the fruit? And if you look up at your Bible there, Genesis 12, 1 through 3, what was Abram called to be is the same calling we're all called to be. Right? The Bible says there that God said, get thee out of thy country and out of thy father's house, and right, unto a land that I will show thee, and I will make thy name great, and I will curse them that curse thee, and bless them that bless thee, and in the earth all the families of the earth shall be blessed. In you all the families of the earth shall be blessed. So what was Abraham called to be? A blessing. The fruit is a blessing. That's what it means, right? When we bear fruit, it's a blessing. It's a blessing to someone else. Someone else comes along and they taste and they see that God is good. And you know what the most beautiful thing is? What's in the fruit? The seed. The seed is in the fruit. Now you think about that for a moment. If you have taken some seeds out of the Bible and you have planted them in your heart and you understand that scripture, that truth, and then that bears fruit, when you share that fruit with someone else, you're sharing with them that truth, where it came from, that seed. Isn't that amazing? It's beautiful. And God created a situation this thing could grow exponentially out of control, right? I mean, you look at just a bell pepper plant. I opened up a bell pepper, I thought, man, I wonder how many seeds are here. So I started counting them. 300 seeds. More than 300 seeds in a couple. I counted out a couple of them just to see what the average was. And man, each one of those seeds is going to create a pepper plant that grows another 10, 12 peppers, right? And I mean, this thing is out of control. It's amazing that we have any sort of starvation on the planet, right? I mean, really. And here, the greatest evidence of the power of Christianity that can be presented to the world is a well-ordered, well-disciplined family. This will recommend the truth as nothing else can, for it is a living witness of its practical power upon the heart. Right? You know, when we think about our families, we think about our own personal families, sometimes they're the hardest people to get along with. Right? Because, and we realize that's the thing that's under attack the most, is the family. Satan hates the family because of this aspect right here. Because it represents to the world the best picture of Christianity. So our witness, are we a living witness? The Bible also says that ye are the salt of the earth. But if the salt has lost its savor, wherewith shall it be salted? It's henceforth good for nothing, cast out and trodden under the foot of men. And I thought about this verse, and I remember thinking years ago, I wonder what that means. How does salt lose its savor? Right? What does that mean? And actually, I don't think I even have my little... Yeah, I left them. I usually have two little vials, one with Morton salt and one with sea salt, and I hold up the Morton salt and I say, this is salt that's lost its savor. Because the ocean has 92 minerals in it that are in nearly perfect, identical proportion to 92 minerals in your bloodstream. And when I go to farmer's market and I do the salt and I do our soil salvation kit, which I'll share with you here next, I say that, and all the evolutionists and atheists, they go, oh yeah, see, it's because we're from the sea. And I go, wait, and I let them sit there and think that just for a little moment longer. And I say, but I didn't say you were like the sea. I said your bloodstream was like the sea. What are you like? What are we like? What are we made out of? Dirt. We're just made out of dirt. Literally, Adam, the word Adam in the original meant earthling. Literally made from the earth. And we're sitting on the most amazing evidence that we were created by God, and what the Bible says is true is because of this fact. Because when you approach agriculture from a creation standpoint, then you must balance the soil to a healthy human system, and that in turn grows fully nutrient-dense food, and that is going to bring a health benefit to the person who eats it. Amen? Amen. What a beautiful thing we have there. And so this was a kit that we put together using the sea salt in there and microbial inoculants. So in these vials are different vials of microbials. So like this one here has 25 different microbes in it in the 5 major classes that are found in all healthy soils. And they're dormant in this solution until you put them in water, and they all start coming alive. And the bacteria will double their numbers every half hour on a warm day. So you're just seeding a little bit in there and bolstering that soil food web. And we called it soil salvation because all the soils are depleted, right? Everywhere you go in the world, the soils have been deficient. And so we need to grow nutrient-dense food by starting a microbial revival and mineral reformation. Question?
I thought I read somewhere that chemical fertilizers leave too many residual salts in the soil after a period. Is that true?
Yes, and we'll have more on that coming up on the problem with chemical fertilizers and what that situation brings. So here's a let me back this up. So this is a video clip. I've had the opportunity to travel around a number of times and apprentice and help Lynn Hogue with his gardening seminars. And how many of you have heard of Lynn Hogue? Okay, a few of you, right? Good. And it's been an amazing thing to learn the things that he's learned. And he learned the Ellen White method from Herbert Clarence White. Okay? And Herbert was Ellen White's grandson. And when she came back here to Elfshaven, right here, she put in some orchards and things down there, and she taught her grandkids this method that she had learned in a dream that she used in Australia with great success. And Lynn learned this method, and everywhere he's gone, he's planted trees this way and had great success doing it. So this is a little video that we cut together for those gardening seminars. So I'll just play this because it has a beautiful testimony in it here as well. But you'll see right in the beginning there's these 2 trees. He had a forestry service student come to his gardening class and said, "Hey, I wonder if we plant a giant sequoia, redwood this way, what would happen?" And Lynn goes, "I don't know, let's try it." So they did it, and this is the result here.
Okay, we want to just look at these trees that were planted. This one was planted the Ellen White method, and the others were planted the forestry method. And you can see that there's a huge difference in these trees. If you can come in a little closer here and look at the size of this trunk. So let's go over to the largest of those that is grown the forestry method. Now these would be considered healthy trees, but you can see the difference here in the mass of these trees. And if we were to cut this one, which is the largest of those planted the forestry method, and cut that one, the Ellen White method, and weigh them, we would have a difference of at least 1 to 20 in mass. So there's a huge difference in the growth of these trees. Elizabeth and I came into church one September morning, right here, and Stan and Angie Clementi were sitting in front of us. And they were obviously agitated about something. Something was bothering them. So I asked, "What's going on?" "Well, Angie had been to her doctor that week, and he had told her that she had stage 4 melanoma and that there was nothing they could do for her. In other words, go home and prepare for the worst. Well, this was in September, and now the following Tuesday night we have garden class here. So the next Tuesday night I talked to the people in the garden class and I said, hey, we've been studying these different methods of gardening. One of these rows is the ocean water method, and we've studied how ocean water, diluted ocean water, makes plants stronger, makes their immune system stronger. Then when people or animals eat that food, that health benefit is transferred to them. And what do you feel, how do you feel about giving this 130-foot row to Stan and Angie? Everybody was enthusiastic about it. Absolutely, let's do that. And so I went to Stan and told him I've been studying about this, or we've been doing this in the garden, and he said, absolutely, I'll use that. So he came down and faithfully harvested that row every week, and Angie used it. Now, less than 5 months later, Elizabeth and I came back into the church, sat behind Stan and Angie again, and this was in January, and now Stan and Angie were absolutely praising God. They were so excited. So, again, I asked, what's happening? Well, Angie was at her doctor's this week, and they can find no sign of the cancer, none. Growing foods this way has absolutely healing abilities, has tremendous benefits for us there. A quote from the Advocate, March 1, 1901. The article says, the relation of true education to the farm. There is need of much more extensive knowledge in regard to the preparation of the soil. There is not sufficient breadth of view as to what can be realized from the earth. A narrow, unvarying routine is followed with discouraging results. Let the educated ability be employed in devising improved methods of work. This is just what the Lord wants. There is need of intelligent and educated ability to devise the best methods in farming, in building, and in every other department, that the worker may not labor in vain. God, who has made the world for the benefit of man, will provide means from the earth to sustain the diligent worker. The seed placed in thoroughly prepared soil will produce its harvest. That's a promise to us. And what we show and demonstrate is how to thoroughly prepare that soil. I'm often asked, when I tell a story about Angie, I'm often asked, is there any scientific proof to this? And yes, there's lots of scientific proof to this, and we'll go through that in the seminar.
Pretty neat, huh? And did you notice there that quote from the Advocate? She said there needs to be much more extensive knowledge on the preparation of the soil. So that's really what it comes down to. If we feed the soil will feed our plants. That's, we've gotten off track and thinking, we need to feed the plant. They need nitrogen, they need potassium, they need, and that's gotten us into the chemical situation we're in. Dr. Maynard Murray, this guy was the first to use sea salt on plants of all types, and his study started traveling around with the Navy and looking at, or actually he traveled around the world with fishermen first and looked at all the fish they were pulling out of the sea and all the creatures they were pulling out of the sea, and not once did he see a tumor or cancer or heart disease or plaque in the arteries or anything like that, right? Interesting, right? So why was that? And then he started testing the ocean. He had the Navy actually go around and gather samples for him all over the world. And he found that no matter where you went, the ocean was the same, identical. And that if more of one element was dumped into the ocean, like let's say you just dumped a bunch of mercury into the ocean. There's mercury as one of those 92 elements that's in perfect balance in there, right? If the ocean doesn't need any more mercury in that area, it just falls out on the bottom. And that happens with every mineral that you add extra into this solution. It doesn't create more levels of mercury in the ocean itself. If there's mercury floating around in the ocean, which is going to sink to the bottom, and who's at the bottom? Those little creatures that are bottom feeders, right? So all the shrimps and the crabs and all those guys, poor guys, they're loaded with mercury, right? Because it just goes right into them. Fortunately, the sea plants don't uptake mercury. So if you eat seaweed and that sort of thing from the sea, you have no risk there in mercury poisoning like you do eating the life out of the sea. So then he started an oceanponic farm in Florida where he did all this experimenting with different dilutions of ocean water on plants. He found that the coconut tree will drink straight seawater. If you have a coconut tree, you can literally just water it straight ocean water. That's why coconut trees will grow right on the sand, right next to the water. And if you go to an island, take a coconut from the shoreline and then go up the mountain and take a coconut from up there, and you'll taste a difference. There'll be a difference. That one right down by the sea is going to taste the best because it's going to be fully mineralized. And actually, coconut water is as close to blood plasma of any natural substance out there. And you can literally, they did this in World War II, they just poked a hole in the coconut and stuck it in their vein, and there was an IV. They filtered seawater and gave it as a blood transfusion and saved people's lives because of the similarity there. Maynard Murray, he founded Sea Agri, and that's where this particular salt is coming from. This is C90, as they call it on the market. When he first did this research, he found 90 elements, but then they found 2 more now, so there's actually 92 minerals in the sea. And that company is where we're getting our sea solids from, harvested right there in Baja. It's a 100-mile stretch of beach, or 100 miles from any industry, and so they've got a good inlet there that they can collect as clean a Pacific Ocean water as we can get. So C90, that's this is their website, Sea Agri's website here, talking about Maynard Murray and all the things that he did in his research and how that helped to start this company here. There was a guy by the name of Dr. Don Jansen who bought his farm in Florida, who turned his focus entirely to wheatgrass once he realized that wheatgrass will also take up all 92 minerals out of the sea and become a fully mineralized food. And you could survive on 8 ounces a day, eat nothing else, and have perfect health. That'd be a little difficult to do. It's about a tray a day. So it's a lot of wheatgrass. It's a lot of juicing. A lot of, I brought a juicer here. We can try this. This is wheatgrass that's from Shasta. And you can see they're actually growing it in dirt, which is good. Most wheatgrass that I find, you just find a little mass of sprouts on the bottom, and that's it. You go to Jamba Juice, you look at their mat, there's no dirt in there. It's just a mass of sprouts. They're just growing sprouts on top of sprouts. And how many of you had wheatgrass juice from Jamba Juice? Is it good? No, it's disgusting. Right? It doesn't taste like anything. It tastes very grassy. It doesn't have a lot of flavor. Well, we'll try this. We'll see if it's any different. This is a little wheatgrass juicer. You can get these online for about 25 bucks, 40 bucks actually, I think I paid for this one. And I had a stainless steel one. This is a cast iron one, nickel plated. And I had a stainless steel one when I was at camp meeting this last summer. Some lady kept coming by the booth, and just at the end I was like, all right, fine, I'll sell it to you. You can buy it. So I sold her my wheatgrass juicer. But I did a wheatgrass juice bar there at SoCal camp meeting, and didn't think it would go that great, and I had to go buy more wheatgrass. People were into it. They were just like, man, this is good. The kids kept coming by wanting to try it, and it's very, very nutritious. I mean, you think about it, right? Herds of animals survive on nothing but Grass. And how he came to this realization was his family, his dad and his brother, ran a huge cattle ranch, multi-million-dollar cattle ranch operation, and they always had about 160 head of buffalo because their family didn't like beef, they liked buffalo. So they had this herd of buffalo that was for their personal consumption and whatnot. And they had a lot of tourists that would come by their place. It was a really beautiful place, and so they wanted to see the buffalo. And that was always a problem because the buffalo would be out grazing somewhere else. Well, he found that if he just took the sea salt and he sprinkled it by the fence, the buffalo smelled that, came over there, and they ate that grass first before eating any of the other grass because they could smell the nutrient content in that grass. They wouldn't eat, he said that the herd of buffalo would not eat any cut grass. You bring any baled anything in there, they wouldn't even touch it. They were that picky. And I mean, that just goes to show, right? Nature will seek these things out and know what's nutrient dense. There was a story also that Don Jansen told of his of a woman and her granddaughter who survived the Holocaust hiding in a wall in the house, and she would send her granddaughter out at night, and she would just go and just pick as many blades of grass as she could, and then come back inside, and they just nibbled on grass all day long. That's all. That was their only food for months. They never got malnutrition. They never got sick. They were completely healthy. And later on in that woman's life, she had this crazy accident where she broke both her legs, couldn't walk. They told her she would never walk again. And she would just tell people, hey, push me out on the lawn. They'd push her out on the lawn in her little wheelchair, and she would just lay down and she would eat as much grass as she could reach. So there's something really unique about wheatgrass. And if you haven't ever grown it, I brought a demonstration here today. I soaked some wheat berries, and we got some trays. And so when we go outside, I'll have the kids help. We'll put together a couple wheatgrass trays and just show how simple that is to do. And we can sample some wheatgrass juice here too when we go, just before we go to break. Say again? Oh yes.
So the woman who was on the grass and she was eating grass.
Yes. So she healed. Yeah. She walked again. Yes. Yeah. I meant to finish that. She walked again. She totally healed up, and she was claiming that it was because of the nutrients that she was, gaining out of the grass. So wheatgrass will take up all 92 minerals from the sea. So what you do is you make a dilute. It's like diluting the ocean water 10 to 1, and you use that when you're watering, and it'll actually foliar feed, go right in through the blades as well.
What about the contamination that's coming from Japan's nuclear power plants that was hit by tsunami?
Yeah.
Are we affected?
I think I'm sure we are. They've been saying that's kind of happening, and so that's why I always talk about Schultz's stuff, because I think it's very important to do cleansing. And one of the cleanses in here, his bowel cleanse, incorporates bentonite clay in with the charcoal and apple pectin, marshmallow root, and all these really tactile, swelling, sticky things that go through your gut and just pull stuff out. But the clay is really good for pulling out heavy metals and radiation and that sort of thing. So,
Will the sea heal itself? Because so.
Yeah, that's to this point it has, but we know that the Bibles predict there's going to be a time when a third of the sea pops up dead, and we know it's going to get to a point where it can't handle it possibly. But for now it is, and we're still using it, and it's.
I'm just wanted to ask what about rock dust, because you can put
Rock dust.
minerals
Yes,
too.
yes.
And what's different between ocean and rock dust?
Yeah.
Because this is ocean.
Yeah. This is trace minerals, and we're talking minute amounts, right? Amounts that most farmers and things say, doesn't even matter. That doesn't matter. But it does matter. The tiny, tiny little things do matter. And it's what ends up fully mineralizing your food in the end, is by having the trace mineral content there as well. Balancing the soil with, this isn't bringing in adequate levels of calcium or boron and that sort of thing, right? So we've got to go to rock dust and that sort of thing to bring those levels up. And we'll talk more about that here. Just to show you, these are just a couple pictures from my little containers in my backyard right now. I moved to a place where I can't grow in the ground because there's so much deer, and I just don't have time to put up a fence, and it's on a really steep hill. So I've just been planting in containers, and I learned a lot this last year about container gardening. My yield of sweet potatoes wasn't as good as I was hoping out of that barrel. And then talking with the guy at the nursery, his wife started container gardening, and they now sell these bags. I don't know if you've seen these, but they come in all sizes, like little ones up to a whole yard. And because it's a porous cloth, the roots will come to the edge, and instead of hitting a hard surface like they do here and then start running, and they just round and round and round and round and round and waste energy and are, choking the plant essentially. The roots come to the edge of that bag and they stop and they put out all these little root hairs and it breathes. It'll actually breathe. And you'll get twice the yield out of the same volume of dirt using a bag or using wood or a clay pot or something that will breathe versus plastic. Yeah. There's my horseradish. If you grow horseradish and you don't want it around, grow it in a container. Otherwise, it's going to take over. This is my little potato patch. I saw this, somebody do this where they started down low and then you start building, you keep burying the plant and you can get a lot more yield out of your potato plant that way. I've been growing my lettuce in gutters. So just hung some gutters on the side of the garage and I've gotten a couple of trimmings off that top row. This one I've pulled out now and I've got a bunch of spinach. They're all about this size right now. I grab every little container I have around. I'm just throwing something in it. We can grow anywhere, right? There's a lot of people that say, "Oh, I don't have enough space" or whatever. If you've got a little sunny porch, you can grow something, right? The point is to just get started and start doing it. But we know there's an enemy amongst us, is there not? And he's also a sower of seed, right? The devil is alive and well and out there propagating his messages. And the thing about his seed, it's not normal seed, right? It's been genetically modified and altered in such a way that he can plant his seeds in the heart, put poisons on them, and nothing else will grow, right? So that's something that we're fighting against, really. And the Bible has given us a lot of insight into this battle that we're engaged in, right? And really, we're not called to do battle with Satan ourselves, are we? God's doing that battle. God's won that battle, and it's simply a battle with self to get out of the way and let God into our lives in a powerful way that will affect others, right? So, to turn our focus a little bit here, food. Interesting, just some of these numbers here. You look at organic just versus conventional, and you're going to pay twice as much, typically, for organic, right? And America has gotten into this mindset that cheaper is better. Somehow, the dollar menu is attractive, right? When really, man, you're not even getting $1's worth of nutrients, really. So, what we really need to start asking is, stop asking what's the price, and we need to start asking what's the nutrient value. What's the value of this? Regardless of the price, what's the value of this? How much nutrients are in this food that I'm eating? Because we're basically in a full stomach starvation situation in this country. Everybody eats, we all feel full, but our bodies are starving of nutrients. And that's because there's been a downturn in the nutrient content of our food. And look at, we're even eating more food and we're starving. How is that? We're eating more food and we're starving, right? So the average American is eating almost 2,000 pounds of food. That was in 2011, this little infographic they put together, right? And you look at some of these here, 631 pounds of dairy products a year, 450 pounds of vegetables, 273 pounds of fruit, and then they split up red meats and fats and poultry and eggs and all those things out there. But look at the increase. In the 50s, people were eating about 119 pounds of meat a year. Now they're eating 170 pounds of meat a year. Okay? In the early 50s, 7 pounds of cheese, that was good. Now it's 30 pounds of cheese. In the 50s, 10 pounds of soda, or gallons of soda there, and now America's drinking 53 gallons of soda on average a year. Wow. Food, right? It's this hamburger and fries has got teeth. And you know, kids especially, man, they're up against a battle, right? I mean, they get addicted to these foods. They think it's all right because their parents are giving it to them, and before you know it, they're having health issues in their teens. We're having child onset, all sorts of diseases that they never saw before. So obviously what we're eating is wreaking havoc. This was another interesting infographic I found. What we think and what we do sometimes are two different things. I'm looking at an evolution of America's health standards. From 1970 to 2008, there's been a 25% increase, as we saw in that last slide, of overall consumption of food. And this was a few years ago as well. It says adult obesity has increased from 15% of the population to over 30% of the population, and that's even increased now to almost over 50% of the population. So it's an epidemic situation, and if these trends continue to occur, 1 in 3 people are going to be having diabetes by 2015. 1 in 3. 75% of Americans eat their meals at a fast food restaurant. 10% of the entire caloric intake is from high fructose corn syrup, which is the most highly refined sweetener on the face of the planet. The body actually doesn't even recognize it as a sugar, and it stores it instantly as a fat. So, and then it's a very complex situation for your body to try to break that down into energy later. Of course, America eats a lot of red meat, sugary drinks, sugary desserts, eggs, refined grains. And it's just interesting looking at the different usages of the food groups and what has been recommended to the population. Notice how in 43, they split the veggies up. They had potatoes and other vegetables here. They had their green and yellow as its own slice of the pie. Tomatoes and fruit, another slice of the pie. I mean, nearly half that plate is veggies, right? And then by 56, it's just divided into 4, and that veggie portion goes to a quarter of the plate. And of course, the problems with these recommendations is they've never made any sort of they weren't making any sort of distinguish between good and bad choices, between bacon and lean chicken, for instance, that sort of thing. There was no caution about what foods to eat in moderation. 1979, still the split into the 4 pie pieces. By 92 is when we saw the first pyramid, food pyramid, with grains and everything down here as the heavy base, when really our vegetables and our fruit should be that heavy base. And then recently, 2005, they went to this other pyramid with this little figure hiking upstairs, which is supposed to indicate exercise. And again, not real critical on what meats and things that we should avoid, or which ones are better than others. And the caloric intake has increased. 2011, still looking very similar here. That's some interesting recommendations here at the end. Increasing your activity. He has a MyPlate website, or there's a MyPlate website where you can go and you can kind of track what you've been eating, what to consume. So eating nutrient-dense foods. They had this little slide there. I was like, oh, interesting. Eating nutrient-dense foods. According to the new food guide, half of each meal should be fruits and veggies. Okay, so now we're back to half of your meal should be fruits and veggies. They are dense in nutrients and generally low in calories. Now, that's making a lot of assumptions by just stating that, right? they're dense in nutrients? Well, are they? That's really the question. Are they dense in nutrients? And we can actually measure these things. I brought a refractometer here, and we'll test. I brought some kale, and some of you brought some kale and an apple. We got an orange, and we can test this right here with this little device in just a minute. So why is our food nutrient deficient? What's brought this about? There's been a decline in agricultural biodiversity based on what we've chosen to grow, right? In America, everybody likes what kind of lettuce? Iceberg, unfortunately. The most nutrient deficient lettuce of all the lettuces, right? So we're growing that the most. And, you go to Europe or wherever, and they like the more bitter lettuces, the arugulas and, mustard greens and things, right? And they're finding those phytonutrients actually have a bitter, astringent taste, and you want that. You want those phytonutrients, and we're eating a lot of food that isn't fully nutrient dense. And then you add on top of that, people aren't eating the full portions of veggies and fruit each day. So that's continuing this situation of full stomach starvation. We're breeding the nutrition out of our food, like this article talked about corn and how the corn varieties that we've chosen, the white corn, sweet white corn, is less nutrient dense than some of the older heirloom varieties. And we've created a situation that's, there was hundreds of different species of wheat on this continent, and we've whittled it down to 4 is what we're growing, right? So we're narrowing the biodiversity, and that's going to have problems for sure in the future. We could see the extinction of certain varieties. So I found tons of articles. I just typed in nutrient decline of food supply or whatever. I can't remember exactly what I searched, right? And all these things started popping up. Crop yields expand, but nutrition is left behind. Today, foods produces 10 to 25% less iron, zinc, protein, calcium, vitamin C, and other nutrients. Studies show the research of Washington State University, who analyzed 63 spring wheat cultivate grown between 1842 and 2003, found that 11% decline in iron, 16% decline in copper, 25% decline in zinc, 50% decline in selenium. So we're seeing this decline in all this in our food supply. This is an infographic I found on the declining nutrition values in food in the UK. And it says that, did you know that you have to eat 4 carrots today to get the same amount of magnesium as 1 carrot in 1940? Mass production methods is not getting the same amount of important micronutrients into the food from the soil as in 1949. And there's the percentage drops of all those different minerals there. Potassium, 19% drop, 16% drop in magnesium, 16% drop in calcium, 24% drop in iron, 20% drop in copper, and so on and so forth. We're losing 41% drop in calcium. Calcium is the most abundant needed element in the soil, and it's the most abundant element in your body. And like we said, we approach agriculture from the standpoint of creation. You line those up, those proportions up, and you start getting really, really positive results. Fruits, vegetables, not as nutritious as 50 years ago. And then I noticed all these articles started referencing Dr. Donald Davis and the University of Texas. And they each one of these mentioned 2004 study, University of Texas, this decline of nutrient value in our food. Here's time. Eating veggies is not so good for you. And they also are referencing Donald Davis from University of Texas. So all these Scientific America started talking about this study at the University of Texas. Of course, Mother Earth News, looking at industrial farmed foods have lower nutrient content. So people are starting to become a lot more aware of this. Fruits and veggies yielding fewer nutrients than in the past. I mean, it just went on and on and on. Do fruits and veggies have enough nutrients for you today? Less than 100 years ago, an apple was just an apple and broccoli was just broccoli, but according to recent analysis, they've lost some of their nutrient punch that they once had. Over-farming the soils in which they are grown has leached most of the natural minerals and nutrients out of the soil, leaving little to promote natural growth. Now it's chemically induced growth. And I mean, it really, we couldn't be farming in the way we are farming unless chemistry came along, right? Science really has kind of bit us in the tail end here because of that. And they've gone big into chemical farming. And how many of you, a lot of you have heard of Mittleider, right? And my great-grandfather, Andrew Nelson, actually worked with Mittleider in the Philippines. And how many of you have seen that book, Food for Everyone? I meant to grab a copy and bring it over here. I saw it in my church library. But in the very front cover is a picture of Mittleider and his wife and my great-grandpa Nelson, Andrew, and his wife. He did a lot of research there in the Philippines, and their whole thing was food for everyone. We're going to solve world hunger, through chemistry and growing all these big yields and everything. And they were growing these ginormous potatoes and sweet potatoes and things, but the nutrient value was really low. So it's back to natural here. 80% of foods tested showed a substantial drop in calcium and iron. 75% had a large drop in vitamin A. 50% had a considerable vitamin C and riboflavin that were lost. So we're losing nutrients out of our food, basically, here's the gist. And it just went on and on. I found multiple articles. And then here is from the University of Texas website, Dr. Donald Davis. This is the guy that has created so much interest in this area. And he's the one who did this study where he compared the nutrient values that had been recorded all the way back to 1950, compared those with the values of 1999, and showed that 13 nutrients were shown in decline. Like here's just the decline of broccoli, right? I mean, 59% of calcium has been lost, 37% of the riboflavin, 26% of the iron, 14% of the vitamin C, 5% of the phosphorus, and I found chart after chart after chart like this, looking at all these varieties, going through what's going on. These were a couple interesting graphs. I found average mineral content, all right, in selected vegetables from 1914 to 1997, and look at that decline, huge decline, as we introduced more and more forms of mass agriculture, right? And by the 60s, it hit this low. And look at, if you compare that to deaths from heart disease, and you could put any disease in here really, and you see this climb of disease going right along with the decline of nutrient value. As minerals go down, disease goes up. That's what those two graphs are showing. And here was another chart that just looked at, in 1980, heart conditions. This was out of 100,000 people, 75 people had a heart condition in 1980. 94, 89 people. So an 18% increase. Chronic bronchitis, a 50% increase from 1980 to 94. It's just a 14-year period. And you can see these increases are just happening. So nutrients goes down, nutrient deficiency goes up, and disease is a result. So you just look at, I found all these charts on different deficiencies. So here's vitamin B12 deficiency. 50% of vegetarians and 80% of vegans are deficient in vitamin B12. And I found this out firsthand. 6 months ago, I had a massive staph infection in my leg that put me in the hospital. And when I finally got a doctor, a guy in my church, Dr. Timothy Arnott. I don't know if any of you have heard of him. he's a good doctor, lives in my town. He took me on. He doesn't take Medi-Cal, but he took me on because he's my friend. And in my blood, we found that my B levels were really low, and so were my D3. And I've never taken a supplement for B12 before, really, on any sort of consistent basis. So since then, I've really started, and Monday I go get my blood tested again and see where those levels are at, because that's a crucial one that a lot of people overlook is vitamin B12. Vitamin K deficiency. So all these deficiencies in vitamins as a result of our food. So that brings us to this gentleman here by the name of Dr. Kerry Reams. Did a lot in the area of health and agriculture. He lived there between 1903 and 1985. He was a man ahead of his time. He was trained in mathematics and biophysics, biochemistry, made discoveries in the fields of human health, plant growth, energetics, animal health, soil restoration. And a famous quote of his is, God is the basis of life, life is the basis of energy, and energy is the basis of matter. And so really his interest was in looking at how matter becomes energy and energy becomes matter. And he found that basically he substantiated the quote that Ellen White said, all life is electrical. Right? And he actually approached agriculture from more of an electromagnetic standpoint. So the balancing of the microbes and the minerals in the soil was about balancing the charges in the soil. And we're going to hear a little bit more about that coming up here. Kerry Reams and Dan Scow, he basically started International Ag Labs. Ag Labs, it was carried on by Dan Scow, and so yeah, here's a quote. Reams taught that the functional foundation of nature is electromagnetic, and that the chemistry of nature is secondary. So the electricity aspect of it is a very interesting point, and you're going to hear a little bit more about that when we talk about the Ellen White method. So that's how he approached fertilization as well, was from an electromagnetic perspective. So I'm going to take just a step back in history just to bring us up to Kerry Reams here and his contribution to agriculture. Adolf Ferdinand Wenceslas Brix, all right, what a name, right? Was the guy who first measured, he was the first scientist to figure out a way to measure the density of plant juices. And this was his little contraption that he put together, a little graduated cylinder in which you put the solution you wanted to test, and then he had a closed glass contraption that had a little lead shot and wax dependent upon, he had to get this perfect amount of that in there based on the weight of the glass and the volume of the air in there and everything. And then this thing would sink down into the water and give you this reading and give you an indication of the total dissolved solids in that juice. And this was then carried on by Ernst Karl Abbey. He took those findings, and he was actually the first one to develop a scientific instrument to measure the different densities of plant juices. That was the first refractometer there. It looked very similar to a microscope. And this is the modern day refractometer right here. And you can get one of these on the internet for about $40. They used to be $100 just a couple years ago, so they've really come down in price. And you put a drop of juice on here, and we can do this here at the break. You guys can, those who are interested actually looking at this, you can look through here. And actually here, you guys want to look and see? Let me cut open a little orange here. So you tell me what that number is in there. You see it? So you got to aim it at the light a little bit. You see where the blue and the white fields come together? Here, put your other hand on it. You got it?
Yeah.
What's the number?
I can't tell.
Can't tell? Maybe your brother can see. Let him look at it. So you'll see with that scale in the middle, and then there's a blue field and a white field, and where the blue and the white come together, what's the number on the scale?
51.
Close. You got it backwards. 15, right? Very good, 15. So then you go to a chart like this, a bricks chart, and this was Kerry Reams' contribution here. He's the one that first put together these charts. It says this chart was originally developed by Dr. Kerry Reams. And oranges are poor when they're 6, they're average when they're 10, they're good when they're 16, so we were just under good, but it could be better, right? It could be excellent. And this is what we're going for in what we're doing here, is we're trying to get these numbers up here. When I first heard the Ellen White method, I did an experimental Ellen White bed, a 10 by 12 bed in my backyard. And the Sun Gold cherry tomatoes that I put in that bed bricksed at a 22. And if you look at the tomato, I mean, that's off the chart, 22. They were candy sweet. And my girls would wake up in the morning and they'd be like, Dad, we want to go eat some tomatoes. Really? We're going to eat breakfast. No, we want to eat tomatoes. And they every morning, they knew that just like the buffalo, you're like, hey man, I want to eat those tomatoes. Those are good. And my friend Brandon, we made a little video about one of the amendments we were putting on our website. And I said, bring over your kids, let's shoot them in my greenhouse and picking some stuff. And there's some tomatoes ripe they can pick. And Brandon goes, oh, you're going to get my kids to eat tomatoes. And so they come over and they start picking through stuff. And I hear his son Noah in the back of the greenhouse. Hey, Dad, you got to come try these tomatoes. These are amazing. And they were just chowing them because, yeah, kids know. The reason kids don't like tomatoes these days is because they don't have any nutrient value. They're literally bricksing down here in 2 and 3. And the tomato doesn't start like tasting like anything until it's a 5. So you don't start getting any flavor till about 5. You get to 12, that's a phenomenal tomato.
So the number of bricks is the nutrient content, or is it the sugar content?
Both. It's the percentage of that drop of juice that is total dissolved solids. So, does that make sense? So sugar is going to be in there with the mineral content as well. So, you can get false readings sometimes. Like if I let the refractometer sit there for a while, that number is going to go up as the water dehydrates and the density of that solution increases, right? So you're not getting an indication of what nutrients are there, but you're getting an overall picture of where everything's at, right?
You're saying that flavor indicates nutrient density?
No.
No?
What is it? It's a book?
Flavor indicates nutrient density, is that what you're saying?
Yes, that's what I'm saying. I was
Produce that we buy from the supermarket,
Yeah.
if it doesn't taste good, it's probably not.
That's right. That's right. That's right. Once I started using this little instrument, I realized real quickly, oh yeah, God designed a refractometer in our mouth. I mean, you can tell. And I've gotten pretty good at to where I can taste something and go, that's probably about a 10. Put it on there, and sure enough. Especially with your sweeter varieties and things, it's easier to tell. So yeah, these charts, you can print these off. I had one back here, yeah. This is what I would take to farmer's market with me, and as people would walk by and say, hey, let me see those peaches you got there. You want to see what the nutrient value is? That's a good little...
Can you compare between different fruits and vegetables, or is that not really relevant?
Well, the numbers are going to be different. Obviously, pineapples are sweeter than pears, and so those values, you're not going to compare direct numbers with different varieties. That's why Kerry Reams put this chart together, because originally this technology was designed to see how much sugar was in the grape juice, so they knew when to make wine. I mean, that's what drove it. So it was Kerry Reams that came along and said, hey man, I want to put together a chart of just all the vegetables and fruits that typically people eat, and let's put some numbers to them. So he's the one that actually put this chart together, and it's been copied thousands of times, and you look at all these different charts and all these numbers are the same based on what he put together.
You said that you dug your garden, the one where you put the tomatoes in, with
Yeah.
Ellen White's method.
you're
Yeah.
going to get to hear about that
Yep,
method.
yep, we're gonna hear about that method. So International Ag Labs, that was is carrying on the work of Dr. Carrie Reams, and this is the laboratory that Lynn Hogue uses. And you take a soil sample, you send a little baggie of soil to this lab, they'll give you a recommendation for about $60 of all the things that your soil is deficient in. And then they produce a bunch of solutions as well. So they've been a great resource. Here's another guy, Kinsey, and he started Kinsey Ag Labs, and he is also approaching agriculture from a creation standpoint and balancing the soil to the human system, and is a student protege of Dr. Albrecht, if you've ever heard of Albrecht. He's kind of the famous soil scientist. This was a really interesting little article that Brandon just sent me. Learn how this family grows 6,000 pounds of food on 1/10 of an acre. Okay? So I found a little news clip that someone had put together on this family here, and so I'll let this play, and you'll find this pretty amazing.
Growing your own usually means moving to the country, plowing the fields, cultivating the crops, harvesting the bounty for your table. But these days, more people are turning to their own backyards to create urban farms. One Southern California family is at the forefront of that movement. Drivers whizzing past on the 210 freeway through Pasadena have no idea that a stone's throw away from the fast lane is a lush but tiny Eden, a 4,000 square foot farm. It not only feeds a family, but revolutionizes the idea of what can be done in a very unlikely place, the middle of a city.
This is city living, but I brought the country to the city. Rather than having to go out to the country, I just imported it.
63-year-old Jules Gervais started this backyard farm 10 years ago. It's a deliberate throwback to the storied days of self-reliant rural America. Jules and his children grow almost all the food they need, and everyone pitches in.
5 pounds of grapefruit.
His daughters, Anise.
We have another guy coming to pick up.
And Jordan.
Yeah, are you done? Okay.
And his son, Justin. Their produce is organic, and their animals are, well, friendlier than average.
Say hi. Say hi.
We have eight chickens, 4 ducks, and 2 goats. I joke with people. I said I think my animals fit better in a city backyard than a lot of dogs in the neighborhood.
The ducks and chickens lay thousands of eggs a year and keep the bugs in check.
And they really made the dynamics of the urban homestead much more sustainable.
Sustainable and dense. On their 4,000 square feet, they raise 400 varieties of vegetables, fruits, and edible flowers. 6,000 pounds a year, enough to feed themselves with plenty left over. And with the current passion at high-end restaurants for local, pesticide-free produce, chefs are literally beating a path to their door.
Hi, how
Hello, good. How are you doing?
So we have your order for today.
Oh, wonderful.
And then I'll get your sorrel here. Stuff is really good. So what are you going to do with the sorrel?
I'm going to use it to make a really nice relish with cucumber for a salmon dish.
The family makes about $20,000 a year from their front porch sales. They use it to buy the crops they can't grow, like wheat, rice, and oats.
I would say at the beginning, I didn't really believe I could do it. I had some doubts because I kept thinking this place is too small. There's no way that we're going to be able to feed ourselves. Plus, I never thought we could even grow the vegetables for the market.
So how did this experiment in independent living begin? It all began 10 years ago when Jules bought some taco shells for dinner. He learned too late that the shells were being recalled because they had been made by mistake with genetically modified corn.
When I thought about putting this food in my children's mouth, and they were depending on me to give them good stuff. I mean, they'll take whatever any child would take what a parent hands them. They'll say, it comes from my mom or dad. And I couldn't afford to be in that position of giving them bad stuff.
Now, a decade later, this radical foodie has succeeded in going off the grid. He calls his lifestyle the path to freedom.
And what did family think of that whole approach?
They thought it was strange. They thought it was. My daughter wouldn't come out of the front yard and visit with her friends because they said, "What's up with your dad?" They wanted to know what was going on because I was making some radical changes here.
The Dervaes have no ugly commute. They avoid office politics and will never get fired. But their jobs are way more than 9 to 5.
I need the help, all the help I can get, and it's my family that, like in the old days, the farmer's family made the difference.
Jordan takes care of the animals.
A joke for them, we call them pet organic composting machines.
Justin is in charge of making sure they get the most out of every square foot of soil. And sometimes the results are extraordinary.
You actually grew this?
Yeah, it's like a little pumpkin, but it's very long.
Just slightly.
Slightly.
He's also the beekeeper.
Oh my gosh, that's the first time I've ever done straight from the honeycomb.
Jules prides himself on his gourmet compost.
Yummy, yummy. Only worms could love them.
Could love this.
Rotten stuff.
Anise is in charge of cooking the vegetarian meals.
All homegrown, strawberries and edible flowers and salad and beets and carrots.
And the canning.
We got grape leaves, pickles, beans, and pickled peppers to all sorts of jams, tomato sauce.
And the menu? That depends on what's in season.
What happens when something's out of season?
We just don't eat it. You're out of luck. It's out of season.
There are no microwave ovens in this kitchen, and no Cuisinarts either.
We have, gizmos, but they're just hand-powered.
What little electricity they use is generated by these solar panels.
How much is your electricity bill?
Well, it's running about the highest $12 a month.
$12 a month for everything here.
Yeah.
They spend even less on gas. This is their biodiesel brewing station.
So this is just used grease from restaurants?
Yeah, they use it to fry onion rings, french fries, anything you would fry.
And you get it free?
Yeah, free and delivered on our doorstep.
The gasoline station is self-serve. It hasn't always been easy. Justin remembers the year that frost wiped out a crop. Another year, it was a destructive insect. And recently, they've noticed a new challenge, climate change.
We call it the forefront of global weirding because we've been gardening for so long, you can sense things are off. We have this June bug that comes out. It's called June, so it's supposed to come out in June, but it comes out in July and August and September, so something's definitely off.
The other challenge is water. Southern California skies don't deliver enough of it. So Jules keeps the water bill down with this ancient form of irrigation.
That's a clay pot irrigation.
So it's buried under there.
It's buried, usually up to the throat here, and then all you do is fill it up, and the water weeps through the porous skin, through the clay, and you get the water where the plants need it at the root zone. Plants take the water as needed. So just so simple.
It's 5 o'clock, dinner time, the time when it all pays off.
Is it going to be inside or outside?
Oh no, it was supposed to be outside.
The Dervaes are the ultimate locavores. Their food traveled a whole 100 feet from the field to the table. They all say they love urban homesteading and can't imagine living a typical consumer-driven life. But there's one thing they would like.
My plans are to have Homesteadville, which is
What's Homesteadville?
a village of all homesteads to start start with my family will be there. They'll have their homesteads. Their extended family will be there, and people that want to live this lifestyle will be there.
At the end of the day, some not-so-back-to-nature activity. Visits to their websites have grown dramatically. They get about 6 million hits a month from others interested in this grow-it-yourself revolution.
Growing food yourself is a dangerous act because you're in danger of becoming free. We're all in the same boat, on the same planet, and there are people now asking deep questions about the future of the planet, and they're willing to do this. They're willing to take a risk.
It's a risk that has paid off for Jules. and is blazing a trail for others.
Pretty neat, huh? You know, because I always get people saying, oh man, I live in the city. I don't have anywhere I can grow. But look at that. Those guys are growing in tiny little 4,000 square foot area.
Urban Homestead Tours in June. They have tours in Oakland and what was that?
Cool.
Down there somewhere.
Cool. And how do you find out about all those?
Just type in Urban Homestead Oakland. Google that.
Okay.
Does anybody know where you can get those water pots for?
Those clay pots? Yeah, that was an interesting little tidbit,
Yeah,
huh?
that's a really
Yeah.
interesting tidbit for this area.
Yeah, yeah.
Wow.
We have a couple tomatoes here that someone brought in. I want to test these before I forget what they are. This one is from Costco. This one's from the College Market. They look really identical, but let's see. Maybe there's a difference. You guys want to help me again? Yeah. Get a little Kleenex here to wipe this off. Okay. You can hold that for me. Now I'll get the tomato juice going.
How much does that little machine cost?
About 40 bucks.
Oh, really?
Yep. Just search. Just search refractometer. It's worth it. It's worth it.
You can get them on Amazon?
You can get them on Amazon. Yep. Here, do you want to take those to the lunchroom? We can use them still. What's that one at?
5.
Is it? See what he thinks. So the Costco one was right at 5. So that's not horrible.
What's the range?
The tomato is 4 is poor, 6 is average, so it's still below average from Costco.
Yeah, what's perfect?
12. 12 is excellent. 12 would be excellent. And the one from College Market, what do you think? Is it the same?
I don't
What do you think?
It's a little under 5. Like
You're right, it's 4. So College Market's even one notch below Costco. At the Paradise, this is a picture here from the Paradise Adventist School. This is where we have the opportunity of having our office. Little Light Studios operates out of the old home ec room. We, I guess, no longer feel a need to teach kids how to cook. But we're grateful to have the space.
Because there's all the dollar menu places.
That's right, there's all the dollar menu places. But our 8th grade teacher at our school is something unique. He's been the 8th grade teacher at this school since I went to this school. His name is David Vixie.
I was going to say, he looks like your identical twin from,
Right.
because you can't see his face.
Right. Yep.
Kind of dressed like.
Yeah, Dave Vixie is the 8th grade teacher there, and when I was in school there, he took our class on, there was always a week of outdoor school. So he took us out camping, showed us how to use a compass, survived down by the river with just a space blanket. We went caving, a bunch of different things. It was a fun week of outdoor school. And then he did an ongoing simulation the whole year. The first day of school, we came in and there was grass and a paper river and no desks. Empty room. And a map on the wall, and he said the year's 18, whatever the year the Homestead Act was enacted, and you pick your homestead, and then each week was a year, and we rolled dice to see if it was a bumper or a lean or a drought. And you were either a farmer or a blacksmith, or you chose your occupation. And in 10 years, 10 weeks, if you raised a certain amount of money to be able to buy a house, then you got to keep your land, and you got a desk. 10 weeks into school. Now, some people did pretty well, and they got their desk like 6-7 weeks into school. The rest of us sitting on the floor. Well, it came time, the 10 weeks mark started coming up, and I was a farmer, and the year years hadn't been very good previous to that, and it was looking like I was not going to have enough money to buy a house. And I did not want to go live in the slum. And the slum was a desk at the front of the room, and you had to have everything on the desk. He didn't let you put your backpack on the ground. You had to have everything on the desk. So everybody was at the desk, and there was just enough chairs for everybody was there. He kept making the table just enough for whoever was in the slum. And so I did not want to sit at that desk right next to everybody else and see. So I went up to him and I said, hey, you said we had to have a house. I can't buy one, but I can build one. Can I build a house? And he goes, what do you mean? I go, well, I'll just bring some wood in here and I'll build a little house. And it'll fit my desk and it'll fit my friend Aaron's desk. And we'll both have a house and we'll live in the house together. And I can look out the window and he can look out the door. And he goes, all right, do it. And so I built that little house, and it was just, I mean, some old wood in the back. I mean, this was temporary, right? He still has it. He still uses it. And I should have went in there and taken a picture. It's actually in the room right now, in his classroom right now. And it's kind of funny to see that old shanty he's kept together. I can't believe he's kept it together. And then other kids took on. That year there were 3 other houses built, and then successive years after that, one kid's dad was an builder, came in and built him this 2-story little mansion. And his desk was on the little porch upstairs, and it had trim and pillars, and I mean it was like pretty ornate. It was unique. So he'll set all that stuff up, and he'll do a simulation town at his house. And now all the kids get ready. The first 3 weeks of school, they're getting ready. They're preparing, learning how to work with animals. They're going to migrate across the country from Independence, Missouri to California is the simulation. And then he takes them. The week of outdoor school goes to a portion of the California-Oregon Trail, and he does a week on the California-Oregon Trail with real covered wagons, real oxen, real mules. Kids are dressed up in bonnets and period clothing. And so yeah, we've been actually working on a documentary about his whole style of teaching and everything. And so he actually took this field that was next to the school that's been destined to be a ball field for years. Since I went to school there, they said they were going to build a ball field over there. It's never happened. And it's now a wheat field. It's grown wheat the last 3 years in a row. It's been a wheat field. And this is its fourth season now. And then just to the side of the wheat field, we started doing some gardening. Actually, Lynn came and we did one little row the first year down here, and now they're using the amendment that we got from Ag Labs from Lynn, and we're balancing the soil here, and they're doing all these different tests. They're testing just with doing nothing, testing with just horse manure from Mr. Vixie's farm. So the white stuff is the amendment. It's predominantly soft rock phosphate, and then all the other minerals and things that are deficient in the soil. And so they're sprinkling that in this row and then tilling it in. And we'll demonstrate that here as well. There's a little picture you can see. This is right next to the school, and it's about a 2-acre wheat field. And the kids go out there and pick out the rocks. He brings out some oxen and an old plow, and they run a plow, and they go out and they hand cast the seed. They got to do the math and figure out their little plot and how much seed goes down per acre. And they go out and they're like out there like this, going, "Wow, this is like in the Bible." And then he's sitting them down and going through all those lessons with them and teaching them all those lessons. It's a really unique thing that the students get to go through there, and I think it's totally providential. Because I've told Dave, "Hey Dave, did you know that agriculture was to be the ABCs of education?" He's like, "No, I never heard that." And here he is doing it, and so it's amazing to see the Holy Spirit working here on our little school. And our goal is to eventually start a garden club and really get things going there, and do some unique things with it. So that brings us to soil preparation, and this is the first page out of chapter 1 in Lynn's book that you get from him when you do his gardening class. And so that's where we're gonna look at just a little brief description of the Mittleider method. We already looked at ocean water and high bricks, and then we're going to look at the Ellen White method.
Where is he that he gives this class? Like, where is he located?
Well, fortunately today we have a treat because Lynn is here. And so Lynn is now going to come up. And this is a real treat. And this is because his granddaughter goes to this school, and Brian is her favorite teacher. So And so when Lynn called me and said, hey, I can make it by this weekend, what a treat. So Lynn, I'd like to turn over the time to you now, and you can go through a little bit of the mitt lighter and the Ellen White method and soil prep and how to take a soil sample.
When I was 13 years old, Herbert Clarence White, the grandson of Ellen White, came to our church, Baltimore, Maryland, and put on a whole week seminar on organic gardening and taught this Ellen White planting method, this tree planting method. We lived a long ways from the church, and I twisted my dad's arm, and he took me every night and on Sunday to that class. Anyway, I got all fired up about it, went home and planted 30 fruit trees this way, and they all did wonderfully well. Now, I'm 73 years old now, and every place that I've lived for a year or more from that time until now, if I've lived there a year or more, I've planted trees this way. They've all done wonderfully well. This is a little bit of divine wisdom given to this church for this time. And if you'll use it, you'll get some pretty spectacular results.
Amen.
Thank you. Okay. This is a comparison, 6 sequoia trees. And they were all the same size. They were all tiny little plants like this, little tiny sticks. And 5 were planted the forestry method, and 1 was planted the Ellen White method here. Okay. At 3.5 years, that was, there's some of our pathfinders on that there. And 3.5 years, this is a forestry method one there. Tremendous difference. Now, to be fair, the forestry method plants thousands of trees, and they have a tool, and they step on it, push it back, drop a little seedling in, and pull it back. And that's planted. They've got to plant thousands and thousands of trees that way. This Ellen White method, we give the tree everything that it needs, and it takes a lot of material and a lot of work to do that. But hopefully, if you're planting a fruit tree, it's going to be there for the rest of time, and you'll get very, very good results with that. Okay. Okay, there are those trees at 5 years. 5 years old again. All right, 6 years. Good comparison there on it. Now, how do we do this? What is this method? Well, it's a method of putting in different, digging a deep hole and then putting in different layers, White says, of materials that would make rich soil. We put in, one of the layers is a layer of rock. Don't leave that layer out. Ellen White saw that in her vision. She was shown that. And that layer of rock will change the electrical magnetic field in that hole. This time of year we buy fruit trees, bare root fruit trees at the nursery. And if you'll go to the nursery and look at those trees, look at the roots, you'll see that most of the roots are going in one direction. And then if you understand how trees are grafted in the nursery, you'll be able to tell in which direction that tree was growing, north, south, east, west. And you'll be able to line that tree up there. And in every case, you'll see that the majority of those roots are pointing towards magnetic north. The same thing that makes your compass swing to magnetic north makes those trees grow. There's a energy in the surface, in the topsoil, that is running through that, and your trees will use that energy there. So don't leave that layer of rock out. Now, some people have said, well, I'm going to mix the rock all up in different, in that hole. Don't do that. Put them in, just like Ellen White said, a layer of rock. Yes, sir.
Hard. What kind of rock?
What kind of rock? Good question. I've used all kinds of rock, and it seems to work. We're blessed with volcanic rock in this part of the world. Volcanic rock is usually a richer soil, but I don't think it'll make any difference. I've also used rock anywhere from pea gravel size to softball size. I prefer gravel, it's just easier to work with, and you'll need about 10 gallons of gravel per tree when you're planting it. And we'll do that this afternoon. Here you see we've got a hole ready to plant in, and you'll see we've got a pipe in the bottom of the hole. We find that the more air we get to plant roots without drying them out, the faster and the healthier that plant will grow. So the pipe is for air, and it's just a principle there. We'll demonstrate that this afternoon.
What is that cylindrical, white cylinder? That's a pipe?
That's a piece, yes, that's just a white plastic pipe, and you can use that. And you notice that I've got rocks on either end. That's just to keep it from filling up with mud, because we're going to put more dirt in there and plant the tree in there. Okay. Now, often when I'm planting trees, I think the trees today are in plastic pots out there. If the pot is strong enough that I can turn it upside down, the empty pot upside down in the bottom of that hole, if it's strong enough that it's not going to collapse under the weight of the soil on top, I'll often use that. The principle is simply to get more air down there. Another thing that I've done when we have planted this way a garden, I'm talking about vegetables, tomatoes and beans and whatever, when we make a row this way, I have taken French drain pipe. That's the 3-inch or 4-inch pipe that has little holes all around it, you know. We've taken that and we put it all down through the bottom of the trench there, and then daylighted it on both ends so that there's air flow through there. That works also there.
I'm sorry, do one on each end?
Daylight just means that the pipe comes up to the air, yes. So we have plenty of air through there. The more air we get to plant roots, the faster and the better they're going to grow, provided we don't dry them out.
So the first layer is rock, and then the second is a pipe?
The first layer is not rock, but I'll show it. Will you be here this afternoon? We'll demonstrate it.
Part of it.
Okay.
I'll just be here partly.
Okay, we'll try to do this first then. The first layer, the bottom of that hole, we're going to put in rich soil, and we're going to amend that soil. And we're going to amend it with soft rock phosphate and calciums, which come from lime. We're going to put in other things. We have a tree planting kit that we use. And in that kit we have things like copper, which your tree will need, zinc, manganese, iron. These are micronutrients, but the tree needs them, and it needs them in the right amounts. And so we put all those things, we mix all those things into the right amounts. Another thing we put in there is the ocean water salt, just like Tommy demonstrated this morning, the C90. That goes in there. And incidentally, if you have peaches or nectarines, if you will apply some of that salt in the right amount, diluted, if you will apply some of that to your fruit trees, you will get the most delicious peaches you've ever had in your life. There. Okay, so here we are, we're mixing the soil and the compost and the peat moss there. Now there's that layer of rock starting to go into that hole there. If you have gophers, this is a place to put the gopher wire in. You want to cut off a piece of gopher wire that's 9 or 10 feet long, and that'll make a nice big circle that'll just fit inside of that hole for you. So you want to put it there about at this stage there. With the gopher wire, as the gopher's coming through the ground, he'll hit that wire, and his habit is that he'll come up, he won't go down. When he comes to the top of the ground, if your gopher wire is equal with the top of the ground, he'll simply walk across, and now you've got him trapped inside there. So make that gopher wire 4 to 6 inches above the ground, and he won't climb that. Now this won't keep squirrels out, but it'll keep the gophers out there. Okay, now there's a gopher wire I'm putting in this one, and that's way too small. It's too hard to fill that way. So cut it off 9 or 10 feet, and that'll make just a perfect circle for you there. Also, the gopher, as he hits your gopher wire and he starts to, he's got a keen sense of smell, and he can smell those roots in there, and he wants to eat those roots, and he can kill your little tree there. So what he's going to do, he's going to start circling around that gopher wire there. If where the gopher wire comes together, if there's a spot that's as much as an inch wide, he'll get in, okay? So make sure that that's tight, that it's overlapped, and that you've sewn that together tightly there. Now, the gopher can go much deeper than this gopher wire, and he does, but he goes down there to make his nest. But you see, as the gopher is going through the ground, he's eating roots. He's a vegetarian. And most of those roots are close to the surface, so he doesn't go deep. Also, you know when you have gophers because he makes a little volcano mound on top of the ground. Well, he's taking that soil and he's pushing it up. If he goes deep, he's making a lot more extra work for himself. So he's fairly shallow in the ground there. Okay. Well,
you put the gopher wire about 4 inches down below the plant?
the gopher wire should be at least 24 inches wide. Okay, and we usually buy it in 100-foot rolls or whatever. You can buy it in shorter sections there. Anything that is a half inch in hole size or smaller. Now, if you get chicken wire, the gopher will go right through that. Okay, that's an inch wide. But so get the smaller thing there. Okay, now we have lots that we could cover. Matter of fact, my seminars are usually 3-day seminars, and so we can't cover all of that. But Tommy's covered an awful lot of good stuff there, and I'm glad for that. I do want to show you just a couple of things. When we do a church garden, this particular garden is in Placerville, California. And this one year we just didn't have a budget, period, for that garden. So when we started, I just asked people, would any of you like to volunteer to bring seeds, plants, and so forth? And we had a list of things that we needed. And so people would just sign up for it. And even the poorest people in that class would bring a few seeds or something, so they felt part of it. A side benefit from this was that I didn't expect was that when they brought plants or seeds or whatever, they took ownership of that and took a real good interest in that. One man said, hey, I'll bring melons. And so he brought some watermelons and other melon there and planted it. And this particular melon, when it got ripe, we picked it and put it out on the picnic table. That's what we do towards the end of the summer. All this stuff is coming in, and so from a gardening class, it ends up being a picnicking class, but we have a good time. Anyway, this particular watermelon we picked, and I cut it open, and it was bright yellow. And he had bought a yellow watermelon, and it was absolutely delicious. There, we have a question.
I do. Back to the fruit trees. What if you have existing fruit trees that need some more nutrients? I was trying to make a circular trench around and then put in soil amendments, give it some room around where the trunk is, and then sort of enrich the soil. Do you have any recommendations?
Yeah, we do that often. Matter of fact, if you'll call me, you can get a tree planting kit with all of those minerals in the right amounts, and with the directions as to how to use that, and you can help the existing trees there. So.
I'm planting trees today, or I'm planting trees this afternoon right now. Oh, wow. I gotta know all the stuff that's in your kit.
Okay. Just a few things out of that particular garden. The tomato on the right-hand side is a sun gold, yes, sun gold. Those are the tomatoes that Tommy's girls loved. And they're the sweetest tomato that I have ever grown. You don't find them much in the farmers markets because when you pick them, they have a tendency to break. And so it's better if you grow them yourself there. The one on the left is an early girl tomato, and it's a smaller tomato, but it has a tremendously good flavor for a round red tomato there.
Costco's selling those right now outside their front door in Santa Rosa.
The plants?
Plant, hundreds of
Okay,
them.
yes, yes. We have a little Spanish lady that has come to this garden class for the last 10 years. She's been very faithful coming to this class and loves it. And one year she brought me this pathetic little squash plant, and she said, "Lynn, this is a kabocha squash, and I saved the seed, and I grew it in my kitchen window, and it was the scrawniest little plant." And I didn't say this out loud to her, named Sobeda, but I didn't say this out loud, but I thought, wow, this plant is not going to make it. Besides that, you don't save the seed from squash plants because they may have crossed with a zucchini or something else, and you get something weird that you don't want. So you don't do that unless you're careful about saving seed. So we went and we planted it. We used all the right things. We had tested the soil. We put the right nutrients in the ground. And this afternoon, if we plant some plants, I'll show you a transplant formula where we're actually putting life in the soil, what Tommy was talking about earlier. And incidentally, that gets great results, just fabulous results if you'll do that. So anyway, we planted this little kabocha squash, and it took over the lower end of that garden. And it was very good there. Okay, now, when we first started this garden, we have garden class on Tuesday night because Wednesday morning is community service, and so all of the extra produce we would take up there. Matter of fact, we made a commitment that we would tithe this, and because we don't pay for any electricity or rent of the land or even the water for that matter, it's just donated, the spot's donated to us from the church. We took a 20%. We said we're going to take 20% of the produce and we're going to take it up to community service, and that's going to be our tithe. Well, we did that for several years. Often the tithe was more than 50% of what came in there. Whatever was left over, then we sent home with people so that they had plenty of good produce there. Then the last few years we've changed that, and we've changed it to this, that if people in that class know somebody in the neighborhood that's sick and that needs healing food, we want them to take a basket or a box or bag of this and take it to that individual and say, "Hey, I helped grow this. I know that it is very healthy food. I know that it's better. It's more healing than the best organic food that you can buy in the grocery store." So that's our way of tithing now, that we take it to somebody sick. Or the same little lady that I talked about, Sobeda, she came to me last year and she said, I've got a neighbor and she's got 2 little kids, and there's spousal abuse, and she's had to move out, and she's desperately poor. I said, "Sobeda, you take as much food as that lady can use, and take every week, take food to her." And so she did. So if you will tithe in that way, that's an appropriate use of tithe. If you will tithe in that way, it will mean far more to those people than if they just picked up some produce in a community service line there. So now we've got so much to cover here, so I'll give you some resources and you can get a hold of me. Incidentally, you're welcome to call me, and I'll help you on the phone if I can. But let me show you. Let me. Well, let me give you a phone number if you want to call me, okay? First, my name is Lynn, L-Y-N-N. And my phone number is 530-622-4967. 622-4967. Okay. My email is my name, Lynn, Lynn, Hoag, @hotmail.com. It's usually easier for me to answer the phone than an email, but either one is fine there. Okay, I want to give you some other resources. Here is a DVD talking about the Ellen White planting method. And this goes through, this is 57 minutes, and it just shows where we planted a tree, the Ellen White method. This was a Santa Rosa plum tree, and the first year that tree grew, we had some of the new growth that was 7, almost 8 feet of new growth in 1 year. It was tremendous growth on that tree, and you'll get similar growth like this from trees that you plant this way. This DVD is $20, and you can have that. I've got some with me if you want it.
I brought a bunch of copies of that as well.
Oh, good.
So you're gonna be
Okay.
If
If you need that, Tommy's got them. Buy them from Tommy. There. This one Tommy doesn't have yet. This is a. I think we'll have this eventually, but it's not there yet. This is a seminar. This is actually a filming that was professionally done and edited of a seminar that we did in September in Minnesota. And there's actually 7.5 hours of instruction on this. It's nicely done. It's nicely edited so that you can go to any part that you want. You don't have to listen to 7.5 hours to figure out what which subject you want to go to there. So that's available. This is a $200 set for this here. And then we have a workbook. We put this together by hand, but this goes through the whole gardening from testing the soil right on through, gives the Ellen White method and all the other methods that we use there. This book is $35 and it's available. I have some of these with me if you want those there. Okay, it's almost lunchtime, so maybe we've got time for a question or two, and then we'll break for lunch. Yes, ma'am.
When and where is your next seminar, and is it open to the public?
Yes, and it is in Texas. And then there's one in Oregon, and if you want me to come to your church and if your church would like to sponsor me or whatever, you call me, and I'll talk to you about that. So, yes.
He was talking about soft rock phosphate. Do you use that?
Do I use soft rock phosphate?
Mm-hmm.
Yes. Let's talk.
Where do you get yours?
Oh, my sources are in Sacramento or Grass Valley.
You get it from there?
I do. I can get it there. It's not an easy product to get.
We had to get ours from where? Idaho?
We got it from the market.
You get it from Idaho?
Yes, it's more expensive that way. But you can
Oh,
get it
okay.
from Sacramento? From you?
You can get it from Sacramento. Well, I pay about between $16 and $18 a 50-pound bag for it. And you can buy it for the same there. What I'm using comes from Lake Okeechobee area of Florida. I like it better than what comes out of Idaho. The soft rock phosphate that comes from Idaho, California will not allow into the state unless we mix it with 50% compost. And the reason is that some of the heavy metals are too strong in it.
They brought ours in.
Yes, and I brought some in a few years ago, but they won't let us bring it in
Bring it now.
now. No, you can't legally bring it into the state. Yes, sir.
Well, you mentioned the one in Florida. I was told that the Chinese had bought that out and wouldn't let them sell anything.
Not to my knowledge, I'm still buying it there.
That's the one I would prefer to.
Yes, I like that. It's called CalPhos, C-A-L-PHOS. And if you can get that, I like that best. Now let's talk about soft rock phosphate, though. Soft rock phosphate, if you look at the fertilizer numbers on the bag, it will be 0, 3, 0. Okay, the 3 is the phosphate there. Remember, the first number is always the nitrogen, the last one is potassium there. Okay, if you go to the nursery and you buy a bag of fertilizer, phosphate, you can get it anywhere from about, the superphosphate, anywhere from 42% to 52% there. It's called superphosphate. They take the same material that's mined there, they crush it up into very fine sand, and then they wash it to wash the dust off of it. That dust goes out into big settling ponds, and when that dust dries, without processing what's left over at all, that dust is the soft rock phosphate. Now, that's only 3%, so why would we pay for something, for shipping that stuff across country, which is expensive, when we're only getting 3%? The reason is we're going to get 3% phosphate usable out of that this year, and next year we're going to get 2 or 3% again, and the year after, and the year after, there for a long time. The superphosphate, that sand that they ground up, is sent to the fertilizer factory, and it's treated with strong acids there. Depending on how they treat it, it'll end up with superphosphate or double superphosphate or triple superphosphate. Now, that phosphate is going to be available to your plants, to your plant roots, for about 30 days. And then it's going to be tied up with calciums in the soil and it's not available anymore. However, for most crops, that's enough. So the plants get a good start and they'll grow just fine for this year. The soft rock phosphate is going to be much slower, but it's going to give us a much longer period of time there. So we're going to go back to the microbes and the fungi, the mushroom type plants in the soil. That's what's going to digest the soft rock phosphate and the other minerals there and the organic matter there and feed it to your plant roots in a form that they can take it up. We have a question over here.
I was wondering where you get your solid salts, your sea salts, because I know you have like that brownish salt. Where do you buy it?
At this point, we still have to buy it in bulk. Where's Tommy? Do you have sea salt for people to buy today?
Yeah, I brought a number of these. They're 1 pound jar, but we're getting it from a dealer in Marysville who's a big ag dealer. He buys a 2,000-pound tote of it and buckets it off.
My parents have been to yours before, your seminars, and they got it was just in a bag.
Yeah, it was just in a bag.
It's the stuff you sprinkle on the ground.
It's the same stuff.
It's the
Same stuff.
But
We just made a label.
bigger.
You can get it from Tommy. You can call me and get it from me.
Bigger amount of it, we could work that out. Sure. This is just a pound, so yeah, it works for a small gardener.
Yeah. Listen, you don't need much of that.
You don't need much.
You don't need much. A little bit of that will go a long ways. It'll make a huge difference in flavor and in health of your plants. And you don't need that refractometer to tell you whether the food is good or not. Your tongue will tell you. There. Yes. Is that a what?
The sea salt, is that a monthly application?
No. If you have the soil tested and I provide the right minerals for you for that garden, it'll have it in it already. But then for some things you will add some during the season. Tomatoes, for instance, but for a 30-foot row, you would take 1 ounce. Take your kitchen measuring spoon and take 1 ounce. Put that in a 5-gallon bucket, fill it up with water, make sure it's well dissolved, thank you, and put that on a 30-foot row. And because we're in a drought situation here in the West, don't do that more than 4 times in a whole year, okay? Now, supposedly the winter rains will come and salt leaches out easily from the ground. So if we get adequate winter rains, it will leach out of the ground, and you can do the same thing next year. If it doesn't, then we have to change how we apply that, and we go to foliar feeding instead of nutrient drench in the ground.
So 4 times a year in a drought season?
Maximum, yes.
Okay, no more.
Yes, yes. Now this is a bit of divine wisdom given to us for this period of time. We have all kinds of problems in agriculture. This seems to overcome and just give us tremendous results there. So we want to fill this up. I'm going to plant a tree, a citrus tree here, the Ellen White method. Incidentally, citrus responds nicely to the ocean water minerals. You'll get citrus that tastes much better and that is healthy and good there. We've talked about the ocean water minerals and having all of these different minerals that are in our bodies in almost the same balance. Not quite, but almost identical there. But there's one nutrient that is missing in the whole world since Noah's flood, and that's nitrogen. So if we plant this way and we don't add nitrogen, we will not get a good crop. I've tried it. So we do have to have nitrogen here. Ocean plants need 1/100th of the nitrogen that land plants need. So we've got to add the nitrogen besides there. Now I'm going to need several volunteers for this. First thing is, does somebody have a knife that we can open something that says tree kit? Just open, that says garden in a box, so we'll set that off. Let's take tree kit, let's open that. And I'm going to need some strong people for shoveling different dirt there. And let's see. Tree kit there, yes. Okay. All right. All right. Now you see we've got a nice deep hole. Ellen White didn't say dig a 4-foot by 4-foot hole, but that's fine. It just means we've got more work to fill it up. But that tree will do just fine. Generally, we've gone to about a 3-foot hole, and that is pretty adequate for most things there. Okay. Okay, while we're getting that ready, okay, I just want to show you what this is. This is the tree kit minerals here. There are a lot of different minerals here, and you can see that some is in little pellet form, some is dust, some is sand, a lot of different materials in this. But it's formulated for the right amounts for what this tree needs here. So we want to put some of this in the bottom of that hole. And if you're planting a lot of trees, we want to test the soil and make sure that we put the right things in that. If you're planting 1 or 2 trees in the backyard for practical purposes, if I know where you live, I can mix that tree planting material pretty good there. Okay, I need a couple of guys who are strong who will get peat moss and compost from there. We can use that, can't we?
Yes, everything's
okay.
usable.
Do one of you girls, would you volunteer? Would you help me? One of you girls? Okay. Here's what I want you to do. As we're filling this in now, we'll have some strong men throwing dirt into this hole and other things into this hole. And what I want you girls to do is, whenever I tell you to, is I want you to take a handful of this and just drop it in there, okay? All right. Okay. Okay, who do I have? I need some volunteers strong on the shovels here to soil in.
I
Okay.
can't believe.
Okay, we got somebody here. And we've got somebody over here, okay? Do we have compost here? Hey guys, I want you to start shoveling stuff in there.
Shoveling?
Yeah, just start shoveling it in.
Hey Lynn,
Yes.
can you use coconut core in place of peat moss?
You can. Coconut coir is a good substitute for peat moss. Vic?
Yeah.
Can I get you to
Yeah.
put this in just like this? Okay. Okay, girls, it's time for you again. Okay, it's time for you guys to put some more of this in. This one, drop it in. Lower it in. Okay, girls, it's your turn. Girls, it's your turn. That's good.
You want more peat moss too?
Yeah, yes. Let's get some more peat moss in this one. There. Not yet. Not ready for the rock yet. Now we got a nice deep hole here.
It is a very deep hole.
Yeah, we got a nice deep hole here, and you can see this would be a great place if you had a dead dog or cat to get rid of it, or maybe a neighbor you didn't like. Okay. Now, Sister White said to put in different layers of material that would make for rich soil. Okay, different layers. When we first did this, we started mixing everything together, and that's okay, but it's all right if we don't have it perfectly mixed too. It's different layers that would make good.
missing rocks on the bottom?
No, not on the bottom. We'll show you that in a minute. Okay, girls, it's your turn again. Okay.
What the name of the stuff is that the girls are pouring into the hole?
That's a tree planting kit minerals that we make up special for this.
Basically calcium phosphate, did you say?
No. They're all the different things we have in there. They're actually, when it come right down to it, there are 92 different minerals in there because we've got the ocean water in there besides the minerals. But we need calcium. You saw this morning that we needed more calcium than anything else in the soil and in our bodies. So we've got calcium. We need phosphate, and we have soft rock phosphate in that. And we have a lot of other things in there. We've got gypsum. We've got we've got copper and manganese and all of these micronutrients that your plant needs, that your tree needs. So they're all in a balanced form there. Okay, we want to keep doing this.
What do you think of this? Have you seen it before?
Yeah, that's a good one.
We can put some in there.
Yes.
Okay.
Yes. But let's put it towards the top.
Towards the top? Okay.
Yeah. Okay, and we need more peat moss too now. Okay, yes, girls, it's your turn. Put more in. Put more in. Just throw it all through there. That's good. That's good.
Before about using the, wasn't it leaf?
Oh, dear.
Yes.
Is that something to
If you,
some of this replace that?
some of this replaces that.
Okay.
Yeah.
Because from the kit?
Yes.
Is that part of what's in the kit?
Yes. There. Okay.
Every time they put a shovel of dirt, you want to put another handful of powder.
Yep. Okay, more of this, and okay.
Is that whole box supposed to go in one box?
That whole box will go in one.
Oh, that whole box.
Yes. Okay. Let me see how far you've gotten down, girls. Oh, you're doing a good job. Perfect job. Okay, put some more in.
Oops, all right. Is that your head? Okay. Yes, don't put me on the horn.
Okay, Vic, can I get you to just to walk on that? Just kick it around. Okay, let's not bury Vic. We want him.
But he'd be good for the nutrients, right?
He'd be good compost. Yeah.
Leave him in there.
Then I will grow up again.
Yep. Okay, what Victor's doing is just compacting that. Now we go to a lot of trouble to get air into this hole, but what we don't want is for this to sink too much. So we don't want that tree to be down in a deep hole. So we want him to walk on it just to compact it enough there. Okay, that's good, Vic. Let's keep going.
There we go.
Pardon me. Okay, let's call that good.
Call it good.
Let's call that good. Girls, I want you to put some more on though. And then I want Victor to tramp that around there. Now, someplace over here we have buckets of rock. Okay. If
ashes to ashes.
Okay, do we have that 1/3 full? We have a vote on that. We've got that about 1/3 full.
I reckon.
We're about 1/3 full, aren't we?
Maybe
Okay.
2/5.
Okay. Okay. Does anybody know what goes next?
Rocks.
Rocks. Okay. Yeah, just dump them in. Just dump it in there. Now, okay, just spread it out some.
Question?
Yeah.
Did you use for bare root or potted trees?
Either one. Okay. How much rocks do we put in? We probably got about an inch and a half of rock there, and we need about 2 to 4 inches of rock. So let's get another bucket of rock, or
I'm going to pull out my trees and plant them again now.
no, it's too much work.
Now remember, I had a question over here. I just wanted to say this with the rocks. Remember what's happening here. The reason it's at this depth is because you've got aerobic microbial life that can only live so far down into the soil, and it's about that far. And then beneath that is anaerobic microbial life. So what you're doing is you're putting an insulation layer between the anaerobic and aerobic microbial life, increasing that electromagnetic charge that they each produce. So basically a biological fuel cell is what's being built here. And in cold country climates, they've done this literally for electricity. They'll dig a big long trench, 3-4 feet deep, layer in organic matter and things in there, put a copper wire in there, put a rock layer, more organic matter, copper wire, and plug it in and run LED lights continuously.
That's being done right now.
That's being done right now.
Out in the outback in Africa, in villages where they're 100 kilometers, if I can get your attention, in villages that are maybe 100 kilometers away from any power lines. And now these people have LED lights all night long. Also, they are able to recharge their cell phones and their laptop batteries. So a village that has been isolated from the rest of the world for thousands of years, all of a sudden is connected to the rest of the world. So it's a good thing. Okay, we've got enough there. Now we need some source of air down there, and I usually put some pipes in there, but we're going to plant a tree here, so let's bring one of those trees over. Brian's going to bring one over.
He can give you a lot of hot air.
He can give us a lot of hot air, yes. Okay, let's take it out of here. Okay. No. Okay, Victor, I want to take that pot and put it upside down in the bottom there.
Upside down?
Upside down, yes, just like that. Okay. Now, somebody asked me whether we should score this, and I said no. Unless your tree is really root bound, don't cut the roots. If it goes round and round, it's choking itself off. That's how we make bonsai trees, okay? We tie the roots. So this one I wouldn't worry about. Seems like these roots on the edge are mostly dead anyway there. So this one I wouldn't worry about. They wouldn't score that. Ellen White tells us that when we're transplanting, we should be careful not to break even the smallest little feeder roots if we can help it. So be very careful when you transplant. If that were root bound, I would take my garden knife and I would cut it probably in 3 places around the edge, just so that those roots don't choke the plant off there. Okay, what's the next layer that goes in here? Anybody can tell us? Okay, we need, well, pardon me?
Is it the black soil?
Let's put some of the black soil in, and then we are going to have to use the wheelbarrow on that. So,
Should we hurl? The dirt? Are we supposed to hurl this stuff in here?
okay, girls, now the next little bit, I don't want you to put any of that in, okay? So the next layer that goes in here, you do not want to amend, okay? We're not going to put compost in it. We're not going to put the white stuff the girls are putting in.
No. What's the rationale behind that? Why don't you want to amend it?
If we get too rich, okay, we got a question here.
Everybody want to hear this question?
We got a question here. Why do we want to make the next 1/3 layer here without amendments? Because they're going to be in direct contact with the roots of that tree. We don't want to make it too rich. Now, once that tree is established, it'll go out into those minerals and do just fine. But it could be too rich for it initially. So I asked the girls to hold up, not to put any more of that on until we get to the top layer here. Okay, so just dump this in. Just dump this in, and let's see if we can keep this from falling over down here. Okay, just go ahead and spread it around there. Now, somebody asked a question about leaf mold earlier, because that's in the formula. Where does the leaf mold go? Actually, the transplant formula is taking the place of the leaf mold. The reason I say take leaf mold is if you're in a third world country, you can go out underneath the trees and get leaf mold, and you're planting life in that soil. Yes, another layer of that dark soil. And hey guys, let's put some of this stuff in unamended on this side too.
Before the wheelbarrow? With this?
Yeah, put some of that in, then we'll dump that. No, not yet. Emily, could you hold that for me? Thanks. Okay.
What's the best time of year to plant trees? What's the best time of year to plant trees?
Spring. Up until just about now. We probably shouldn't plant trees from here on. Thank you. Thank you.
When do you need water?
I got some. Oh, for the plants. Do you have a hose?
Yeah, I have a hose.
Okay. Okay, we had a question. When do we plant trees? What's the best time of year to plant trees? For most trees, in this part of the world, we're going to plant them in January, February, March, maybe the first week or two in March, and then we shouldn't plant after that. So we're at the end of the tree planting season now. However, there are trees like some of the chestnuts and pecans, so forth, that actually should be planted in August here, yes. So ask the local nursery, they'll tell you when the right time to.
Soil condition, it shouldn't be too wet? Or?
This soil is pretty dry. We're going to need a lot of water in it.
In the winter, January, February, March, it could be very wet. Do you want to plant them?
Well, we need more water than this. we can kill trees by putting too much water on. They'll drown, okay? So when you dig your hole, it's a good idea to put the hose in it and see how, fill it up with water and see that it drains out in about 24 hours. If it doesn't leach out automatically within 24 hours, you probably shouldn't plant there. Yeah, because what will happen is we'll get a big rainstorm and the water will go into that, and we've got an underground lake, and it'll just kill those tree roots. So, but most holes will leach out in about 24 hours or so. Okay, here's a transplant formula. We use this with transplanting trees. We also use this in the garden. This is, I was so pleased when I came across this, these products, because you can just about eliminate transplant shock. It gives the trees, the plants, a good boost, gives them the right minerals, and we're planting microbes. We're planting life again here. Now, particularly trees.
What's the ingredients?
The ingredients are the rock powders that this tree needs, that your plants need, plus we're putting mycorrhizal, which is the fungi, the mushroom type plant, in a spore form. We're also putting in different microbes there that are going to digest this soil and make it work there. We're going to turn the water on. I think we are, aren't we?
Yeah.
There we go.
My question about the soil in the winter, sometimes it could be too wet. Before you start digging the soil, before you dig the hole.
If the soil is too wet.
Yeah, how can you tell if it's too wet?
You know what? It'll be real muddy and sticky. And so it's hard to plant. It's hard to dig in that too. So it does have to be somewhat dried out. This is too dry right now there. Okay, let's turn the water off for now. Okay, and let's take the hose out. And let's get more of this in there, and then we need more topsoil too. We need more of the black stuff here. There. Not quite yet, almost though, almost. We're at the place where if we needed a gopher wire, we would need to put it in already there.
Where would you have put it in?
Probably 6 inches lower than that, because we want it to stick up about this high above the surrounding ground, okay? Otherwise it doesn't do us any good.
And it's just
there.
going to go around it, it's not going to go at the base?
No, we're going to put it all the way around like this. We're not going to try to make a basket out of it. Now, there are companies that make baskets out of that. They're pretty expensive, but they work.
So it's just simply around the side?
Around it. See, that gopher is going to come through the ground and hit that fence, and he's going to come up. That's his habit. He's not going to go down there. Okay, now I'm doing something here that I shouldn't do, and that's to leave this tree's roots out in the sunshine and the wind. Okay, so if you're planting bare root trees, make sure that you got them, that the roots are wet the whole time. Matter of fact, it wouldn't hurt to put them in a bucket on a day like this, a bucket of water there. Or also we might just lay them down and put wet soil on top of the roots until we plant them. But we want this to be out very little bit. Let's put about half of that in if we're okay with that. Okay, lean it over on its side.
Like this?
Yeah, like that, see? Okay, let's just go all the way around it here. Okay, turn it upside down. Let me put a little bit on the bottom here too.
A worm!
Okay, that's good. That's good.
What did you call that powder?
It's a transplanting formula there. Yeah. Now, when you buy your trees in the nursery, if you're buying in a pot like this, look and see how that tree is growing. Where's north and south and east and west, okay? And then put a little tag on it so, you know, if this is south, just put a little tag there. So when you get it home, you plant it the same way. Particularly citrus is susceptible. Matter of fact, we lose about 20% of citrus trees that are turned the wrong way. Yes, so if you'll put it in the same way that it was growing, that'll be good. If it's a bare root tree grafted, okay, we got a question, and it's an important one here. Okay, I want you to push soil around up against that tree.
You want any of that citrus? You want any of that citrus mix in there yet? Or no?
Yes. Okay, let's. Can I get you to help with this, Billy?
Yes, right here.
Yeah, we want some of this in too.
Now, what about the gopher wire? Do they not have a problem with gophers here? So when would we put the gopher wire in?
Before this, yeah, put it in the wrong
Would have been before.
side of here too.
So after the rock, well, after skirt too.
Okay, we've got several questions, and they're important ones I want to answer. First, let's go to the grafting. When you get a grafted tree, and buy grafted trees, spend the money for it. Don't try to grow your own because there'll be wild trees there. But anyway, get a grafted tree. Let's say it's an apple tree. You'll see that the tree was cut like this. Down below is the rootstock, and above is the apple tree that we want. In this case, we've got a Fuji apple tree here. So remember that the nursery grafts that so that this part, see, this is cut in this angle, and we want this part of that to shade the graft. The graft is the place where the two trees came together, okay? And so that's got to shade it, and the nursery grows that so that that is shaded from the southwest, okay? So when you find out where north is, and you put that tree so that it's facing southwest, you will be planting that apple tree in the same way it grew in the nursery before it was ever harvested there.
So
And
the root stock is then shading the graft side, correct?
the rootstock is shading the graft
Okay.
side, yes, okay. Why do they graft them? It's a real good question. Because, yeah, because the rootstock is a strong, let's call it a wild plant. It's a strong plant that resists disease and gathers the food for the top there. And the top part, if that were planted directly in the soil, would not be as healthy a tree. So by grafting it on, we make the top much stronger and healthier. Also, if we didn't graft this, what we would get would be, let's say you grew an apple from a seed. You ate an apple and it was so good, and so you saved the seed and you planted it, and you got a tree there. Pardon me?
Couldn't you get any kind of apple?
You would end up with any kind of apple. Are you exactly like your mom or your dad? It's neither one, right? Are you exactly like either of your grandparents? No. No, you're not. See, we're all a mixture of all these different genes that we have that come down to us. Same thing is true with the apple tree. So if we don't graft it, we're going to get some mixture, and we don't know whether it's good or not. It might be good, it might not be. Most cases it's not. Most cases they're not really good for fruit. So if we want a Fuji apple, we're going to graft it so we know we got a Fuji apple. Yeah. So that's a good question there. Okay, girls, it's time now for you to put more of this stuff in. So I want you to put it around the side here.
It almost looks like this one's grafted.
It is.
Where is it grafted?
It looks like it right there.
It looks like it could be. Is that a graft mark or not?
Okay, if that's a graft mark, we've got it going the wrong way. Are you able to turn it so that
Or it's an improved
It's
layer?
a Eureka lemon.
Oh, it's a Eureka. Oh, maybe the other one.
There. That's
Southwest. Southwest, okay.
That's okay. Perfect.
Okay, now I want you to put most of that on the outside around here, like that, okay? Yeah, so I want you to spread it all around it there. Okay, and we need more soil, some of this and some of that. And let's put some more compost and let's put some more peat moss. Okay, can I get a volunteer to put peat moss in there too? Okay. That's good. Let's go ahead and dump that. Whoops, excuse me, honey. Okay. That's good.
Want to spread it out now?
Yeah, just spread it out through there. Okay, that's good. That's good. Thank you. Yeah, that's good. Break that up. There.
What about this? Do you use this anymore or no?
Was this a citrus? Yeah, put a little more of that in there. Thank you. Thank you, Bill.
More dirt?
More dirt. We want to fill up that hole totally. Can I get your attention, guys? Okay, the question is, what happens when we plant a tomato plant this way? Now, in a tomato farm, the average plant will produce 6 pounds of tomatoes in a season, and then it's going to die. In your backyard, if you take real good care of it, you probably can get 10 or 12 pounds of tomatoes off of a plant. If you're a super good gardener, you might get 20 pounds. We got over 100 pounds of tomatoes off of one early girl tomato plant there, and that yes, that's a lot of work for a tomato plant. So the second year, you dig down to the pipe and the rock. You don't disturb the rock. So the second year you don't dig as deeply, and you've got that planted. Now some folks took that to heart up in Fort Jones, California, and they double dug and did a good job of planting 20 tomato plants. And then they said, well, they didn't, not this deep, but just regular planting. Double dug, I mean about this deep, okay? And then they tested the soil and we put all the right things. Now these are good gardeners, they do a great job there. And then they decided that they were going to plant 2 tomato plants, the Ellen White method. So they made these 2 big holes and planted 2 tomato plants that way. When the tomatoes were ripening, they called me and they said, we're getting as many tomatoes off of one of those Ellen White tomato plants as we do off the 20-foot row. Yes, every day they were picking as many off of one plant there. So, yeah, you don't need a whole lot of plants there.
How far apart, if you were doing tomato plants like this, how far apart would you put the tomato plants?
You know, we did a whole acre of tomatoes this way, and we put them 5 feet apart in every direction, and they were way too close. So, yes, there. Okay, guys, what I want now is to make a berm, and I want to come clear back to here. So make the berm, and that's uphill, so we need to put most of the dirt here. Let's move this back. We got another question here. How far out do we keep grass, and do we mulch it? The grass is going to compete with that tree, so if we can keep the grass and the weeds out, that's good. Now, there's a lot of talk about mulch. Matter of fact, you're standing on a bunch of it there. Mulch is great because it holds the water and makes the wonderful place for the microbes to live and so forth. It also is a wonderful, wonderful place to breed snails and slugs and earwigs and sow bugs and all kinds of critters there. So while we're asleep at night and we've got, let's say this was a peach tree, and we've got a peach that's almost ripe. Some little critter comes up at night, puts a little hole in it. Well, we're likely to lose that fruit because just like our skin is a protection for us to keep infection out, that skin of that peach, when it's punctured, allows infection to get in. And it may heal itself, but whatever, we've kind of ruined that fruit. So I'm looking for better solutions. We found some paper mulches that are good, that allow that allow water and air to go through, but don't let the light go through. If you keep the light out, you kill the weeds. And especially if you have Bermuda, that can be a real problem there. Okay, guys, let's go ahead and make this a little bigger here, and let's turn the water on again and water this plant. Now, why do we make this? It's to keep the fertilizer and the water where we need it. There. Yeah, go ahead and turn it on. Right there would be great. Actually, this is the end of the sidewalk here, so maybe we should just go ahead and put it here because we're not going to benefit any.
About how much water do you give a new tree like this?
How much water do we give a new tree? Okay, that's an important question, but yeah. Okay, there's another question I want to address here. Another question, how much water do we give a tree here? The only way to know for sure is to take your shovel, let me borrow this one, and just go down into the soil and see how wet or dry it is, okay? And do that in your garden also. Because the amount of water that tree needs when it's 90 degrees is going to be a whole lot more than when it was 60 degrees. Okay? So it varies so much, but we want to make, yeah. Okay, now we still have, where did my helpers go that were spreading the white stuff? Oh, you won? Okay. 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 Okay, now you see we still have some of this stuff left. Okay, now what's going to happen is this tree is going to spread its roots out into the surrounding area, and usually we're not quite this crowded, but I like to put some of this all the way out. So go ahead and spread it. Go ahead and spread it there. And here's some for you too. Go ahead and spread it. You can spread it on this and around the outside there.
When will the tree start producing its fruit? Will it be this year, next year?
Depends on the variety, but yes, it could produce some fruit this year. If we go back to Deuteronomy and Leviticus, there's some instructions there as to how we should make a fruit tree produce. Yeah. Okay. Since it's raised, let me get your attention again. Okay, we got another question. When should this tree produce, and what does the Bible say about that? Go to Leviticus. Go to Deuteronomy, and there we have instruction that when the children of Israel were to come into the promised land, they were to plant new fruit trees. They were to consider its fruit unclean, not edible, for the first 3 years. In the 4th year, the total crop was a dedication to the temple. And then from the 5th year on, they could eat of that fruit. Now this is direction given by God to Moses. This is not a moral issue, okay? Okay, thank you. This is not a moral issue. It's just one of those laws that is beneficial. There's good benefit in that. What orchardists often do is if it's producing a little fruit, let's say it's a peach tree, they'll pick off that little green fruit and just drop it on the ground because you want that energy to go into the tree, to grow a strong, healthy tree. And if you do that, God says that He will bless that tree and that tree will produce more abundantly than if we started eating fruit off of it right away there. So it's your choice, but you will get better fruit if you can do something like that. Then people often say, well, this tree is already 2 or 3 years old, and I don't know how to answer that. It says when you plant a new fruit tree, to wait that 3 years there. Okay.
Eat it on the 4th year after you plant
Well, on the 4th year.
Give it
to the pastor on the 4th year, right?
Pardon me?
Give it to the pastor on the
You give it to the pastor on the 4th year. It's like a tithe on the 4th year, yes. So it certainly would be fine to eat it and maybe give a donation to the church or something like that. Okay, we want to demonstrate what double digging is. Now we're told that we should dig deeply and dig often. I'm quoting Ellen White here. Dig deeply and dig often. Now she also said be careful not to disturb even the little feeder roots. So obviously that's between crops. Okay, so we don't want to mess up our roots when they're growing, but between crops. So if you are able to, and let's say you do 2 rows, and you fertilize them the same, and you plant the same seeds and the same plants in them the same day. So everything is the same, except that you double dig 1 row, and you just dig this, this deep, which is maybe 6-8 inches here, there. Now a rototiller will only go about 6-6.5 inches in most cases there. So if you double dig and you do a comparison, you'll convince yourself very quickly that when Ellen White says to dig deeply, that there's some real value there in that. And if any of you looked at that workbook, there's a chart in there that shows that tomato roots can easily go 10 feet in the ground, 10 feet deep. And even our shallow rooted plants, like lettuce, will have roots down deeper than this into the soil. And so digging deeply is important. Now most of the feeder roots are going to be closer to the surface where there's more nutrition and more life there. All right, so in order to double dig, this is what we do. Now I dig out in my rows, I dig out an area that's about 2 feet by 2 feet. Do we have a pick anywhere handy? Pick? Yeah. Okay, now we're down to subsoil here. Okay, you saw this nice fluffy soil on the top, on the surface here. That's great. Now we're down to subsoil, and you can see we got some clay in it, and it's harder to dig there. And it's a different color too, isn't it? It's a lighter color there. Okay, so we want to leave the subsoil on the bottom. We don't want to put it on the top. If I put this out here on the top, I make my gardening much, much harder. So I want to make sure that we have it. I'll do that.
It's a little loose on the top.
Okay, well, let me do this way so if it comes off, I don't kill somebody. Okay, you can see the difference in color there. Brian, you got good soil in this place. Yeah, nice. Now, we got a lot of air into that. Where's our garden in the box? Let's open that. Here it is. Yeah. Okay, we'll unpack this thing. This says worm castings. These are worm castings from worms that only eat vegan food. That's true. That's true. From Weimar.
Are there
Yeah.
any worms that eat other?
Oh yeah, a lot.
Worm casting farm, they feed them everything from garbage to
Yeah.
manures to everything.
Yeah. Most of the places where you buy worm castings, they're feeding them on city garbage. There. This is stuff that came out of the Weimar cafeteria, which is all vegan, and off of the farm, which is all organic vegan. There. Okay. The next thing in here is a product called 711. 711, that just stands for the fertilizer numbers. Now this was the highest nitrogen source that we could get, which is vegan. So that's why we're using this. Now the reason we wanted to go to vegan is because we get problems. We should go organic, and we are, but we want to go far beyond organic. And in organic, we're going to get a lot of fish material and manures and so forth, and we're getting mercury from these, and we're getting other pollutants from it. And when we go into manures, we've had many gardens ruined by manure. For thousands of years, manures have been great fertilizers. Don't use them today. They're not safe. They'll ruin your garden, and we're getting poisons in because of what commercial farming is doing to the animals, what they're feeding to the animals, and because of the genetically modified food that they're eating. We had a whole garden ruined. I had a whole garden ruined with horse manure. Yes, and I couldn't. Pardon me?
You grew your own chickens, or you had your own horses, and you fed them like you knew what you were feeding them.
Yes.
It would be okay.
If you fed your chickens and your horses strictly organic food, and you knew what it was, it's a good manure. Horse manure is a good thing. For thousands of years that was used. If you get chicken manure today, it's pretty high in arsenic. And the reason that they put arsenic in the chicken food is because those chickens are only going to be alive for a few months at best. Then they're going to be killed and sent to market there. So for that short period of time, the arsenic wards off some of the diseases that they have by growing these animals in close confinement there. So it allows them to live that few months until they sacrifice them there. Okay, if you double dig, if you use, okay, I didn't show you this yet. These look like rabbit pellets. They're not. There are a number of different things in here, but this is a high nitrogen, good fertilizer there. So we want a little bit of that in the bottom of that hole. I've got another product in here someplace. Okay, in this garden in a box is C90 salt, okay? And this you want to dissolve in water, remember, 1 ounce into that 5-gallon pail. And then you're going to use it on a 30-foot row, and you're only going to use it about 4 times a whole year. Yes, question?
Your book said 1 ounce and 2.5 gallons. Is it different
Yes.
because of the drought? Or is it just better to do it in a larger amount?
The 1 ounce is going to go through 30 feet here. Whether I put in 2.5 gallons or 5 gallons doesn't make a difference. The reason I said 2.5 gallons is because you can lift 2.5 gallons. 5 gallons most of us struggle with, okay? But just put it with enough water. Obviously your 30-foot row is going to need far more water than that. So this is just to get it on there. Okay, this is, you've heard, this does tremendous good for you there.
Put that right on the top, that salt solution.
You can. I'd rather dilute it in water and then put the water on.
Well, but I mean, after you finish the planting, is that when you put it on, or do you
put it on yes.
On the very top, or do you put it down in there?
We could put a little in there. I don't. I put it on after.
It's all top
Yeah.
Top water.
Yeah. Okay, so this little section is double dug. Let's pretend that that's our wheelbarrow. It's not, but you can make a wheelbarrow or a box or whatever. There, so we take that out. Okay, now I want to take the next little section of this. Let's take the next 2 feet. And this is topsoil. I'm going to put it right over that hole that I just dug. Okay.
Do it all down the entire row.
Yeah, we're going to do that down the whole entire row. Thank you.
So if you were doing this in a box, like you built a raised bed,
Uh-huh.
so I'm just kind of, you've got your second layer, so would you dig down below your box?
Do you have wire on the bottom of your box or anything?
I do now, yeah.
Okay. Well, it's kind of hard to dig below that, but if you could, before you put the box in or when you put the box in, that would help.
Every once in a while, would I want to go down and take the wire out and then dig down again?
Well, it's an awful lot of extra work.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Good, I like that.
Yeah. Okay, let's talk about that. Maybe you can make the box about that deep, and the wire in the bottom. But now you've got all this soil here, there. Now I presume the wires to keep gophers out, right? Often what happens, I'll tell you a little story if I can. There's a lady came to my garden class the first year, and she went home and did everything perfectly, all of, right amendments and whatever there. She kept complaining to me. She said, "Lynn, my garden's not growing right." Finally, I went over to her house and took a look. Sure enough, her husband had made boxes that were about that deep, put the gopher wire, on the bottom, filled them up. And sure enough, they kept the gophers out. But whenever a root went through that wire in the bottom, the gopher came along and nipped it off. Yeah, so she had the most beautiful little zucchini and potatoes and green beans. And the zucchini was about as big as my end of my little finger. And everything was miniaturized. Well, the way we bonsai plants is to trim the roots there. So she had these beautiful bonsai plants there. Okay, now you see that when I dug this up, this got light and fluffy. And so it looks like there's more soil here than there was originally. That's because we've got a lot of air into it there. Now if I kept doing this all the way down that row, and we got to the end of the row, then I would take that in my wheelbarrow, dump it in the hole at the very end, okay? If you'll do it this way, it's less physical labor than any other thing. If you're on a farm, you can't do that, but on a farm, what they do there, we've got what's called subsoilers. That means the tractor is driving along, and he's got a big hook that comes down into the ground and comes back like this. So he's making holes in the ground as he's pulling the subsoiler along. It leaves the subsoil underneath, but it's opening up that for air and water and microbes. So if you have that option, why of course use that. Okay. When we come to strawberries, these are about the most shallow-rooted plant that we have anywhere.
Shallow-rooted?
These are very shallow-rooted, yes.
All strawberries are, or these that come in the pack?
All of them.
Okay.
All of them are very shallow-rooted there. So I'm not worried about planting strawberries in a place where I didn't double dig. Okay? So we can demonstrate that. But where we double dug, maybe we'll plant something that's a little... Is it okay to put a tomato plant there?
Sure, we can do that.
Okay, good.
We'll put the rest of them down below.
Okay.
tomato or tomato?
You got it?
Yeah, hold that out of the sun for me.
Hold on to see. What kind is
Black Krim tomato, good flavor. What do we do here? We got 3 tomato plants coming out of one pot. Do we try to separate them? No. Yep. Yep. If I tried to take these out individually, I'd mess them all up. So it's better to take them out. You can. It's going to grow better if I do it this way. There. Okay. This garden box, the way we've done it here, should do about 200 feet of row. Okay. So that's about 1,000 square feet of garden. 200 feet of row. Yeah. If it's new soil and you haven't done it before, you might want to put more down on the bottom. Won't hurt to make it double up on that.
How much water do you need more than that?
That's enough. Okay. Can you undo that for me? Thanks, Brian. Okay, so we've got 711. Somebody said, "What's in 711?" You answered that question. Spent grain.
And it's also in the pellet. They put it in the pellet.
Yes. When you get this stuff home, make sure you put it in the barn or the garage because it stinks. It's ammonia fertilizer. Nature making ammonia fertilizer. There. I do want to put some in here.
Yeah, this is really soft. Just open it in.
Okay.
Now what Lynn's making here is a steeped tea. You can take this same setup here with the worm castings, the 711, and there's all sorts of microbes there in those worm castings.
Again.
And you can make a compost tea out of it, a brew tea.
That's enough.
And you just put a fish bubbler in there, and in 24 hours, the microbial life is times 10 million. You make a very concentrated compost tea, and then in just one day you can water that in and actually spread it out and expand what you have, a little further too.
Okay, now.
The garden cost.
Pardon me?
How much is the gardener box there, Lynn?
Garden box is $68 right now, and they're telling me that they're going to raise the price $5. I told you that, I think.
From 58, you said, or 68?
68.
$5 from 68.
From 68. So.
But 1,000 square feet garden for that.
Yeah.
That's good.
Yeah. Now this is a fairly new product. Some of you have used Mittleider before, and our purpose for developing this was to match what Mittleider did as far as pounds per row there, but do it with organically, veganically, and to get the taste there. And everybody that used this last year and has told me about it, they've all said, "Hey, I had a really good garden with it." So I'm pleased with this product. We may still make some changes to it, but right now I'm pleased with the way it works. Now, a difference here is that this will not totally dissolve. Your salt will totally dissolve, and the other products that I carry, they'll totally dissolve, but this won't totally dissolve. Do I have a cup? I don't, do I? Now these rows are about 3 feet apart on center.
Yeah.
Okay. One thing that we borrowed from Mittleider is that we made our rows 5 feet on center. And when you plant this way, you really need that much room. Matter of fact, when it comes to winter squash and watermelons and things like that, you need them 10 feet apart, okay? But here, if you make them 5 feet apart, from the center of this row to the center of that row, 5 feet apart, then we've got maybe 18 inches from here to here. And then we've got the walkway, and then the next 18 inches. That gives you about 3 foot walkway in between here. And you're going to need all of that if you grow this way, because the things will just grow very, very well. If you're growing something like broccoli or cabbage or whatever, then we want to plant one plant here. We want to come over 14 inches and plant another plant here and back like this. So we come back and forth. And so these plants will kind of lean into the aisle, and this one will lean this way, and that's enough room for them, and they'll do just fine. Pepper plants about the same. When it comes to tomatoes, we're going to do just one, because tomatoes get so big, we're just going to do one there. If you're doing corn, you do a double row, and you just plant them whatever the distance is, but you want to do a double row. And if you're planting corn, you want to not only do a double row, you want to do another double row, because the wind pollinates this, and the pollen up here on the tassel goes down to the silk on the corn, and so we have a little bit of wind, and it's going to blow that pollen right away. But when the wind, when the wind's blowing that way, this can pollinate this. When the wind's blowing this way, it'll pollinate it back and forth. But you need to plant the corn in a block to pollinate it there.
And they're 5-foot center, your rows for corn?
Still 5-foot centers. Remember, we got 3 feet in between here, and then we have a double row here, there, and that'll work. Okay, now let's plant the tomato plant, though. Now, most people, when they plant in relatively dry dirt like this is, and then they water the dickens out of the top. And
Move this to the back so people can see it's blocking some.
okay.
Is that going to be in your way?
No, that's good.
Okay.
That's good. Thank you. Okay. Instead, what I want you to do is to pour the water in the bottom of the hole. There. Okay.
There's a cup in there.
Yeah. I'm just going to pour it in here. Now, a bigger plant, I might put as much as a quart in there. Smaller plant, maybe a pint, half a quart there. And if you have it, then use the transplant formula. Although this makes a good substitute for the transplant formula there. There's a lot of life in that, okay? Coming from compost and worm castings and so forth there. Whoops. So we can either just sprinkle a little bit in the bottom like that, or we could put it on the root ball like we did on that citrus tree there. Okay, again, we need to keep these roots dry until we're going to put them in the ground. That's quite dry. This is not root bound, not too bad anyway. So I'm just going to plant this. Okay, now I'm putting in relatively dry soil around it, but that plant with just a little push is in good contact with wet soil underneath. Now, if you do that, resist the temptation to play with that soil too much. In construction, when we want to compact the soil, we're building a house or a building or something, they come in and they grade all this soil, and then they put water on it, and they run heavy equipment over it. So if we play with that soil, we're compacting that soil, and we're doing that soil damage. So be careful not to overdo it when you plant. That's just fine. If you want to put more water on from top, you can. Would be no problem there. Okay, should we plant some strawberries? Yeah. There's an enthusiastic man. Now, in my own garden, I will take a rake. I like a 12-inch wide one, not the big wide ones, but a narrower one. And then, see, we made this hill here, and I just kind of knocked the top off of it here. And then we have a berm on this side and on this side. And when the water comes right through the middle here, it will get both rows if we've got 2 rows, but we want to keep the water here. We don't want it to run down in the center there. Okay, so we don't have a rake. I'll just do this with my fingers. There.
There's one of the large rakes in the greenhouse. Do you want the large rake?
A garden rake?
Yep.
Well, let's see if we can use it.
I got a short flat shovel here.
You got a short flat shovel? Okay, that might work too. That may work too.
Good.
Yeah, that's perfect. Yeah, this is a little too wide for what I like, but
So, is it really important to set up irrigation, or can you water it yourself?
you could water by hand, yeah.
And how often would you? I guess it depends, but.
Well, my drip irrigation, I use T-tape, we'll water it once a day. Dr. Mitleiter always liked to water things once a day, even the tomatoes, and a lot of people don't want to water tomatoes that often. But that would be better. Okay, let's get these babies going. Okay, these are kind of dry. Doesn't hurt to soak them. Soak the whole, everything in there.
Do you find it's harder to get them out then, though?
You know what, I didn't pay any attention to whether it was harder or not. I don't think so. Okay.
Forget that extra one.
Extra what?
That extra plant that was taken out.
Which extra plant?
Lynn, do you want any water?
Not right now. Oh, thank you. Thank you. There. Okay, this transplant formula does not come in the garden in a box, but what we've got here is a pretty good substitute for it. But since we've got this, let's use this here.
And it looks like you're just using like a dusting of it?
Just a dusting. Remember, these things are going to multiply. Some of them double every half hour. Some of them will double every 2 hours in weather like this. Now, do I have any kids that want to help me? Do I have any volunteers? Okay, come on. Okay. See how much I put in there? Okay, I want you just to take a finger like that and put that much in each hole. Okay? I want you to take this cup.
You each get different jobs, I think.
Yep, got different jobs. Okay, I want you to take the cup and I want you to dip out some water from there. And after everything everything's ready. Okay, just put water in the bottom of each hole. Just like that.
The ones that sprinkle?
Yeah, 1 full cup in each hole.
Oh, wow.
1 full cup. Through with that? Good, thank you.
What are you putting in these? Strawberries?
We want to plant strawberries in there. There.
Now, how many years does this first row of strawberries, first planting, stay in its location?
They can stay several years, but
You could let them do some too.
professional strawberry farmers replace them every year.
I want to do that.
Yeah. Yeah. Okay, I want you to take that out for me, and I want you to put this in the water for me when she's got that out, okay?
The entire tray?
The whole tray, everything in there. Ready? Okay. Oh, we got a plant there, don't we? Okay. All right. I want you to just go like that and put that strawberry plant in there. Okay. And then we push some dry dirt around it. Make sure we don't cover this. Okay. We don't cover that right there. Then we push like that. Just like
Out of the container?
Yep. You pop it out of the container.
You guys plant them.
Yep. And you guys can plant them.
There you go. Here, I'll squeeze
Okay.
some.
Yep. That's it.
That's all I've been doing. I'm just
That's
grabbing
good.
by the
That's perfect.
Lynn,
Yes.
are the strawberries planted in gutters?
Yes.
And like hung? Do you think there's enough dirt in that? Would it work? Or because they're so shallow, would it work?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
I like that because then they hang easier for picking.
Yes. Okay, do you want to help plant now?
Yeah.
Okay, take that and drop this and just put it right there. Okay. Now you see with strawberries we got to be very careful not to cover the crown. If we cover the crown, we kill the plant. There. That's this growing point right here. So you go ahead and plant it. Go ahead and plant. They push it down a little bit like that. Now push dry dirt around it.
So do you cover up all the wet part?
Yeah, if you
Like
covered
that?
the wet like that, that would be good.
Okay, should I take
Okay.
these out?
Yep, take those out. We'll plant all of those. We'll plant all of those
Another
there.
tin of strawberries?
Let's see, we've got 1, 2, 3, 4, 6, 7, 8. Yeah, we need 2 more strawberries, all we got. Go ahead and put it in there.
So 2 more tins or
Okay.
just 2 more?
Well, just go ahead and put it in. We'll take 2 out of that. There.
Can you get one out for me? I'll get them out for you. Okay.
Okay, I think we need 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and we're through. Okay, you can plant one here. We can plant one here.
Or here.
Yeah, that's good.
This one
That's
isn't
good.
coming out quite right. But maybe you need to put
Which one?
It's ribbit.
Oh, yeah. Sometimes have to kind of squeeze it like that and dump it like this. Sometimes they don't want to come out. This one doesn't want to come out, does it?
And it ripped.
There you go. There you go.
Careful, then you plant that one.
Okay, we need 1, 2, 3 more, I think. Sure.
Is there ever, you know how tomatoes get those nice rhizomes and things all over the roots?
Yes.
Would you ever, at the end of the season, when your tomatoes frosted and all, just cut it off at the root zone and leave that in the ground?
They won't live.
The good stuff.
It's okay. It won't hurt anything to do that.
I've
Yeah.
heard actually a lot of people now are starting to leave the root systems in the ground because they're such good feeder.
Yes. Yes.
Don't pull them out. Leave
Yes.
them in there and let them rot.
Yeah.
Wait, did you dip it in the water?
The roots are the best. I learned that from you. The
Yeah.
roots are the
There you go, we have 2 for this one.
Yep. Okay. In a minute, Emily. Thank you. Okay. Can I get your attention again? We had a question about. Actually, it's about what's the best plant. We often people want to do companion planting. Okay. What's the best plant to gather nutrients? If we're going to plant tomatoes here this next year, a year from now, what's the best plant to plant in that hole now so that we gather the right nutrients for the tomatoes there? Anybody know? Pardon me? Legumes. That's a good one to use, but the right answer really is a tomato plant. Is a tomato plant, because a tomato plant is made to gather the right nutrients and to grow the right microbes that feed that plant. So if we put a tomato plant here to prepare this for next year's tomato crop, that's good. And the only reason we wouldn't do that is if we end up with a disease, then we might want to change. But tomatoes like to be grown in the same spot. Dr. Kerry Reams, in some of his experiments, let me back up here a little bit. When I plant green beans, the package says that if conditions are ideal, that in 55 days I'll be picking the first beans there. And it takes me 55 days, even with ideal conditions, before I get the first bean. Dr. Kerry Reams was able to plant beans and 18 days later harvest them. Yes. And part of it was that he took green beans and grew them in the same spot, and then he took other green beans and made compost out of that and used that there, so that all of those nutrients, this was just part of it, all of those nutrients, all of those things that foster green beans were there in the garden there. Okay, you guys did a good job, thank you. And yeah, it's getting hot and long. what else do we want to cover, or are we through for today?
All right, so for those of you who want to just see the how to plant wheatgrass, this is how I do it. I mean, there's lots of ways to do it. Probably I've seen people use just coconut coir. I like to use soil, so I'll get a good organic potting mix. This is one they had here at the school, so we're just going to use it just for ease here. You guys want to help me? Okay, so put soil in here. Not quite all the way full, like about 3/4 full. Fill that tray up with that soil. Yeah.
What's in the bottom, he just asked?
That's just a old T-shirt I put in the bottom so that the roots won't go past the bottom of the tray. Which I've had trays I put on the counter, and it was a wooden shelf, and they got under the paint and were going into the shelf. I mean, the roots. You're going to be the most amazed at how much root growth. When the sprout is sticking out of the ground this much, the root system is phenomenal already. And so this is going to be a root-bound situation. You're really only going to be able to grow the grass up about this tall before it's out of what you've given it to eat, and then it's ready to harvest anyway. You got about 10 days to harvest.
You put an old T-shirt in the bottom.
Yeah, I put an old T-shirt in the bottom. Just to use a piece of cloth. I have a piece of plastic in the other one. I've used plastic before too, and then once it got established, you can grab the whole mat and pull it up, and I just pull the plastic out, put it back down so that it can breathe through the lot. Yeah, it's just so that the dirt doesn't just fall through when you're putting it all together. Once the roots get a hold of it, I mean, you can pick this whole thing up, and it's, you know, it's amazing.
Could you pull these out?
It's a mat. Yeah, so you can see how, you know, there's quite a bit of root growth.
Phenomenal it is.
Yeah, pretty phenomenal, huh?
Like you can do with the other roots.
Is there a certain kind or brand or name or something?
I just buy organic wheat seed. You know, I would definitely want to get organic wheat seed. Winter wheat. This is just a potting mix. This is just a potting soil. And once you if you get this going, keep your mats, throw them in a pile, compost them, you know, break them down and make your own dirt. Like Lynn said, the tomato plants will feed the tomato plants. Same thing with the wheatgrass. You've got very nutritious roots and compost from your spent wheat. All right.
Now, how long does that last for Tom after it's that tall, where it's still fresh and safe to eat? So it gets slimy.
Yeah, it'll start to grow. So they'll get some molds and things that'll grow around the root base and start to get in there. So the best thing is to have it in an area where there's air, by a window. You don't want direct sunlight on it when it's growing. It does the best in indirect sunlight, just a little bit of light.
Maybe on your porch where it is.
Yeah, I have a little wire rack I put in the corner, and no direct sunlight comes in that window, except for one part of the day, and I put the shutter down and just shade it. So you take your wheat seeds and you put them in a jar or in any sort of container and soak them overnight. So soak them overnight, and then I just did this the night before last. So these are right at the tail end. You don't want those little roots to be much longer than that, because you'll start damaging them when you start handling them. Literally, the first second you see the little white nodules starting to poke out of the grain, they're ready to plant. So you guys can kind of spread those around. This might do 2 trays. So let's. So
it's pretty thick.
Yeah, you want a nice dense crop, but you don't want it so dense that. Yep. You can taste it. Yeah, you can eat it. Yep, that's a sprouted wheat.
Wheat. I tasted it.
You tasted it? You didn't like it?
Did you taste the seed?
Can we put wheatgrass in the bottom mix, or do you need to?
I haven't tasted it. Yummy.
Can you do the whole thing?
I like the seed.
Say again now.
Can you put this in a Vitamix?
In a Vitamix.
Yeah, can you just juice the entire, when you harvest it?
Oh, I've never tried that. The grass, you know, because we're not a cow and don't have those stomachs like they do. It's virtually impossible for us to. We can't digest this grass. I mean, it's just going to go through you. Yeah, really, all you want is the juice out of it. So, I mean, you could get. There's a lot of fiber there, so you could get, you know. And if you blended it up, that would be the best way to chew it up, because you're never going to chew it up.
I mean,
But yeah, it'll liquefy it.
we've done it,
Yeah.
we've done parsley in Diamond to make a drink, and then we would just strain out the pieces.
Oh, yeah, 'cause it's still a little bit.
Yeah, there's still that little, yeah, the sludge.
Can you do it in regular juice?
Is that just
Now,
dirt?
yep, it's potting mix. It's a good potting mix. So, starting with the good dirt's definitely going to help. Okay, now cover those up with just a little thin layer of dirt.
So you
Now,
can't see them or just?
yeah, just so you can't see them.
Okay.
In a commercial setup like they're doing here, you can see they don't cover the seed at all. They just put it right on top. But they're growing in these big areas where they've got misters on it and it's moist and all the time. And they say to water really hard. So really spray it down, and that'll help wash down the molds and things that will start to grow, and they'll just go right down into the soil. And then you'll want to water when you water with the ocean's salt. So use the seawater solids, dilute it out, put them in a little mister bottle. I have a little mister bottle I just hang on my rack, and I just every day go over there and mist a little bit on there. Water it in if they're looking like they're getting too dry.
Is this good?
But yeah, you'll see this thing will bolt real quick. So we can try. Yeah, that's good. So that's pretty much it. And then you just want to keep that nice and moist right in the beginning, because you'll kill all those little sprouts quick if they dry out.
How long does this take to harvest? Is that what you said was 10
Yep,
days?
10 days. So in 10 days, that'll be a full little. That'll be just like that. So
It's fun around Easter.
so these
Easter grass.
we want to.
You can put all kinds of stuff in it and make it really fun.
Yeah. Let's just give these a little rinse before we juice them.
So you just get one harvest? Is that?
Yep, I've seen people get a couple harvests out of one tray, but pretty much one harvest is, that first harvest is going to be the most nutrient rich, and the top blades of the grass and everything. All right, that's good.
You have to buy the seed, or you can buy in the store.
Just wheat, any wheat. Yeah, it's not any sort of special seed. This is just wheat. So,
Does it matter if it's winter wheat or summer?
doesn't matter if it's winter wheat or hard red. No. That would, yep.
So it doesn't have to be pre-prepared.
No.
Can I try to do something?
Yep. Thank you. Okay, now we need a little cup before you start cranking. Hold on. See if it's going to fit into there. No, so we're going to have to make a little custom cup.
What are the other ones?
What are you doing?
Just making a little lower spot on it so it can fit under that sprout. There you go.
There's a spigot, a spout.
Does that mixer come apart?
Yes, that juicer. Yep, it all comes apart so you can wash it.
I used to have one and it just...
Is it too loose?
Yeah, it feels
Keep cranking. Yep. Yep, we can start cutting the next one off there and getting it ready, because this is only going to make a couple little shots.
Will the champagne juicer work for this?
The juicer is going to give us the, watch your fingers. Oh, I don't want it to get caught in the blade.
Will that come back up again, or no? That one's dead now.
It will, but it's not as good the second time around, so it's best to just mulch that, compost that in, and
All right, who else?
yeah, let's close this. Yeah, keep going, keep going.
Okay, Ursa.
Takes a tray to.
Here, step. Takes a tray to make how much?
Each one of these should make a little shot, a 1 ounce shot, but it usually takes at least one to go.
Oh, the juice is coming on this side. See?
Get the.
Yeah, so let's put a little cup there too.
Yep.
Yep, keep going.
I'll go around it.
Yep. Here comes. There's our first drip. See how rich and green that is? Look at that.
So what's a healthy amount to drink every day?
It
Couple
looks
ounces?
like
Yeah, a couple ounces, an ounce.
Oh, okay.
Best to grow inside. Yep. I thought when I first started doing it, I was like, oh man, I'm going to get a little sun, put them outside, and just, it all just goes quick. You scorch it quick.
Here, come on now.
Come around and get them.
Just soak it overnight?
Yeah, just soak it overnight and then rinse it in the morning and in the evening that second day. Rinse it a couple times so they don't start to rot or anything. Give them a couple of good rinses.
You have energy. I think you ate some beans. It was good.
My turn.
Oh, it's dripping on down the side of the cup right there. See it?
Okay, she wants a turn too. Here, step in.
Yeah, hold that one over there.
Andrew, give her a chance now. Come around. Here, step back. Someone else is getting a turn. So each of you will have half a chance.
No, the other way, the other way. Yeah, that one, yeah, like that.
Or it'll come out there.
Yep. So this little juicer, like I said before, was about 40 bucks. You can get an electric one for 240 bucks, but your 200 bucks is buying you this right here, an arm, right? I mean, that's all. That's as fast as the wheatgrass juicer goes.
Is that a champion juicer?
No, it's a special wheatgrass juicer that has a very slow turning blade.
Okay.
So, Amazon, AliExpress. I think you can find them even cheaper there. That's direct from China.
I can see that comes apart, but does this top one pull apart like this?
Nope, just this slides out,
Oh,
and it's just
no.
a barrel in there and a screen.
Yeah, no,
Yeah.
my one, the top one came apart.
Yeah, no, it doesn't. The top doesn't come apart.
Okay.
All right.
Can we juice these?
No, they won't juice. All right, it looks like that's what we're gonna get. You can keep cranking a little bit more out of there. It looks like you got a few more drops.
Have you ever tried putting seeds in there and making oil out of this grinder?
Not this one, no. I wonder.
I have to try it.
Yeah,
I
I
got
wonder.
one like that.
I wonder.
Because
Yeah, I wonder. They advertised that you could put carrots or anything else through it, so I tried carrots. It's a little bit of a mess. But yeah, and then it's a little bit hard cranking too. That's probably good, huh? Okay. So here, let's divide this up so you guys can all taste just a little bit.
I mean, it's still dripping.
Is it?
Tastes sort of weird.
Tastes sort of weird. It tastes like grass?
Grassy stuff. Kinda. No, there's.
All right, so there's a few little samples here. Anybody want to try?
Can we have a cup?
Yeah. Anybody want to try? Welcome.
Good.
No.
What did you do?
So it just comes apart, and it's just two pieces, really. That's all it's in there is a screen and a little blade, and then you just get the grass out, poking your finger in there, like that. Yeah, you could send that back through and probably get a little bit more out of it. This, you mean? And it's always amazing. I mean, we got that little bit of juice there. That's all the grass that we juiced, Tiny little amount. So that was it. That was it. No, just one. Just do one. And so you can just get successive trays going. You get a tray going, and if it's just you yourself, you might want to do half trays. You could plant half the tray, and then in a few days plant the other half, and then go through it that way. You're going to get about 10 ounces out of each tray. So, you've got, at that 10th day, you've still got 4 or 5 days that you can play with there as you cut it down. So you could get through, a single person could get through a whole tray in 4 or 5 days, a couple ounces a day. Yep, just cut it off right, as low as you can. Snip it as low as you can, get the most juice out of it. I've even plucked it, I was like, I didn't have a knife with me, and I just plucked it, and because it's jointed, you know, it pulled out a stem that was below the surface of the dirt, and it left just this little cap, so you can just pluck it out too.
Did you say that the stuff that you ground up, you put that back in?
You can, yeah, that's great compost. Yeah.
What about? Have you ever done like the refractometer on that stuff? Like how high the score is getting all that stuff?
Yeah, we can actually try that. I have done it before.
Does the wheatgrass juice come out on that thingy? The thing that tells you the
Yeah, let's look at it. Let's see.
I want to find out what number the wheatgrass juice is on that thingy.
Let's see.
There's a little on the counter I could drip.
Here's some.
There, good. Well, I want to find out what the
Do what now?
And I haven't gotten it.
No, I throw it in a pile and compost it, and then just keep using it. So yeah.
To find out what it is. Can I try looking?
Yeah, you can try looking.
Then can I?
It's harder to see because green and blue are very similar colors. So
Which one am I looking at?
you're looking at where the green and the blue come together on that scale.
But I don't see a number there.
Can you see it?
It's between the 5 and the 10.
Right.
Between, which would that be?
So right between 5 and 10.
It's like 7.
Right, it's like 7.5.
5.
It's about a 7.5.
But it's
8.
between the two.
Right. And I don't think they have wheatgrass on the chart here. Let me look. No, not on that one.
Can I see the chart?
It's right there. All right, so any questions? I think that was a good day. All right, we got a lot done there, and the only other thing we didn't get to demonstrate was I can show it to you here. My this is totally overkill for most cases. This is a big compressor for this, but this is just a little air pump compressor, for a big size fish tank. So you can get little ones for a fish tank, and then like I have a little tree, so I can go off all this, and I had all these barrels and stuff in my yard that I was doing compost teas and stuff with. And then also, if you're on city water, this was an important thing we should have mentioned right at the get-go. If you're on city water, your water has chlorine in it. And so you want to put it in a barrel and let that chlorine evaporate out overnight. It'll evaporate out overnight, and you can use that water the next day. And it does even better if you can put a bubbler in it, because that breaks up the surface tension and helps to emancipate the chlorine. Now, if you do your compost teas in there, you put worm castings in that bucket as well, then you'll get that benefit of multiplying your compost, as it were. And if you just Google large veggies in Alaska, there's a guy in Alaska that's been doing this, and he looks like a little midget in his garden because I kid you not, he's growing leeks like this. His head of cabbage is a 30-pound head of cabbage.
How big is
And he huge pumpkins, pumpkins.
Like the size of Cinderella's carriage?
Yeah, like the 100-pound ones, right? And so that he claims it's all due to the compost tea mix that he's doing. He even started a whole website. People kept watching this thing. He started a whole little business selling his little mix. That's his microbial mix, basically, for compost tea. The other thing that helps if you have water in open containers, you discourage mosquitoes from laying larvae in there if you have a bubbler going. So if it's still, then the mosquitoes will come and land in there. And if you do the compost tea, add just a little couple tablespoons of molasses. That'll help feed the microbes and really get their numbers thriving. All right, so here we are in Mason and Carly's garden, and we're going to put down some soil salvation. So this is how we do it. You want to help me, Mason? Each kit comes with a little instruction card. On here is the schedule for each of the different aspects of the kit. There's a leaf feed, a soil treatment, and then a mycorrhiza transplant when you do transplants into the garden. Here Scott has already transplanted all his plants into his beds. So we're going to simply be putting down the first soil treatment the beginning of summer or spring, actually spring soil treatment. We're also going to be doing a leaf feed, so we're going to do the first foliar feed with the Vitazyme and the Oceans 92. Now the thing to remember here is to use non-chlorinated water. So this is water that we've put into this bucket last night, and the chlorine has evaporated out overnight, so that we're not going to kill all the microbes that we're going to put in this water right now and seed into the bed. So let's get started. So the first thing we're going to put in here is the Oceans 92 with the 92 minerals that are in this ocean that are in nearly identical proportion to the 92 minerals in your bloodstream. Okay, we're going to do that. Put your hand out here, Mason. I'm going to take just that first little bit of the salt off. Okay, so you just take that bit off down to the spring there. Next we're going to take our pipette and we're going to take the spring treatment from the Vigester, which is 25 different microbes in 5 major classes that are found in all healthy soils. These are beneficial bacteria, beneficial protozoa, beneficial mycorrhiza fungus, that sort of thing. There's also cobalt in here, which is the precursor to vitamin B12, so we can get vitamin B12 into our plants using this product. Very good product, Vigester. All right, now hold that straight. Now we're going to draw out. You can see here the spring feeding. We're just going to draw out just that much and put it in this bucket. Right down to that line. Next, we're going to put in Phoscal 22. This is centered around soft rock phosphate. There's worm castings, spirulina, kelp, a whole set of microbes in here that are specifically chosen for the uptake of calcium and phosphorus. Make sure you shake this bottle up really good because it settles out and it's really thick. Mason, you want to suck that out for me? Help me out. Or Carly? Yeah, squeeze it. Like that. There you go. Actually, a little more. Oh, did I splash you? Alright, so those are the 3 things that we put in the soil treatment. So we're going to stir this up, and we're just going to use some cups, and we're just going to water it into the garden. Here, Mason. You can go like this. Look, this one's got holes in it. Just let it go like that and water that in. There are tons of nutrients that are unavailable to your plants in the soil, in the form of, composting, plant matter, and wood chips, and whatever amendments that you've tilled in there. So the bacteria and the microbes that are in this solution now are going to start digesting and processing the organic matter in your soil to create plant food. So we're seeding microbes. And these bacteria, some of them will double their numbers every half hour, some of them double their numbers every 2 hours, and you're gonna see a difference in the growth of your plants and, most importantly, the nutrient density of your plants. All right, so the next thing we're going to do here is the foliar feed or leaf feed, and the kit is divided into 6 feedings. So we're going to do the first feeding. So we're going to do the first 1/6 of the Vitazyme out of here. Again, use the pipette, and this allows you to just draw out exactly what you need here. Right down to that line there. Vitazyme is all the enzymes that your plants would need to uptake all these minerals and things that we're putting in there. And then, of course, again, the Oceans 92. You can foliar feed the 92 minerals from the ocean right into the leaves of the plant. If these nutrients are dissolved in water and they come into contact with the stomata, the little windows in the undersides of the leaves, that's where we're going to spray the undersides of the leaves. the plant will uptake those nutrients. So stir that around a little bit, let the salt dissolve. Now I'm just using a little bottle sprayer like this. You can use any sort of pump sprayer. You can just splash it with a cup.
You can just spray on the blueberries.
Yeah, you can just spray on the blueberries. You want to help me spray it on the blueberries?
Me too, please. You. No,
So,
please, me.
what you want to do is you want to spray the undersides like this. There we go. Okay. So, undersides of the leaves like this. You see that? When it comes to your trees, simply use a cup and just drench the foliage of the tree. Once the tree is completely wet, then just move on to the next tree. It's important to get this first feeding in early on, right when the tree puts on leaves is the best time, when the fruit is nice and small and still green, so that you ensure getting these trace minerals into your fruit. And you can do this foliar feeding 3 to 4 times during the growing season. And if you do that, you will notice a drastic difference in the flavor of your fruit that you get off these trees, and that is a result of the nutrient density going up.